If you could respond, instead of raising your hand, if you could respond really. Edwin, no?
Yeah.
Jim King?
You there, Jim?
I don't see him yet.
Not yet?
No. Donald Matisse,
Here.
Gregory Stewart. I don't see him on here yet either. Betty Harris Howard,
Here.
Jamie Wolf here, Aaron Chase. Richard Dory.
Here.
And Brett McCarthy.
Here.
We'll want to keep an eye on there to see any other gentlemen. Going,
Jamie, keep me posted, would you? Who's up there? No, we can't see it. All right, we're going to go over the development down on Main Street. We had one question, I believe, from last week, about 2 weeks ago. And it was about the closeness to the river bank. And we found out there's no amount of space. You can put it wherever. And Dawn looked it up and checked with 2 or 3 sources. So there is no home bank from the river. No, I guess.
So I did check with them, the state of Maine, and they sent me the ordinance that they most recently approved, because you have to send it to the state from the shoreline provision perspective, they have to approve it. And what they have on record does not show a setback or frontage requirements in the village district. It's a general development district, so that's what I found to be.
That actually makes sense if you think about it. You know, downtown areas, most of them don't have them, they can think. So, does anybody have any questions regarding that? You good with that, buddy? Any questions? I think we said, I think that was the only one we had.
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure that to note that the applicant is present if you have questions, and this has been noticed as a public hearing, so we should see if there's any public input before you.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Does anyone from the property have anything to say? You do represent the property? You represent the property? No, you do. All right, do you have any questions? I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
That's what about?
Can you pull it forward closer to the hole?
Okay,
Now you're talking.
all right, does somebody from the development have anything to say?
Not necessarily, I mean, open to any questions, if you guys have any questions for me,
Okay,
are you the one who's doing this, yeah, you are, up there, or?
so anyone have a question? We settled the question, then you don't have any questions, right?
I don't have any
As long as we solved that one, that was a biggie, wasn't it? Okay, does someone like to make a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, does anyone else in the crowd have anything to say?
Or anybody on Zoom? I don't see
Okay,
anybody
sure.
raising their hands, but
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Madam Chair, I just want to make sure that we formally close that public hearing after we confirm no one else wants to take input, and I'd just like to review the draft findings that I prepared before we may take any formal action.
Okay. Nobody in the audience has anything to say? Anyone else?
What do you say?
Do you have any questions or anything to say?
Yes.
Go right ahead, sir.
you
Where
want,
do I go? Right there?
is it this one?
This is in regards to 134 Main Street.
I think it's on, you have to press the button. Does that work?
I'm usually pretty loud anyways. Is there any reason we can't put this to a vote for the town? Let the town decide of what's best for the town? Instead of having a group of people decide, planning board, deciding what's best for the town, why can't we put it to a vote and have the town figure out what's best for the town?
Well, I think it's. Don, you want to answer that, or I can?
There might be misconfusion. We're still on the first item. Are you speaking about the mineral extraction ordinance?
No, it's because there's two mics on. It gives feedback.
They're still on the first item. This item right here. It's right, we're still discussing this item here.
Yeah, but I don't see why, that's what I'm talking, or that's what I'm scratching about. But I don't see why we can't have the town people figure out what's best for the town people. I mean, it used to be everybody got a little vote in on things. Now look what we got that shows up at the meeting, this amount of people.
Second part.
He is now. So we gotta finish the first one.
All right, let's finish. You wanna go over what you did?
Yeah, and I'm not gonna turn this
I'm
on. I
not
think
with
it's
it
more
today,
annoying than
sorry.
helpful. I'll try to be loud. So we haven't done this since I've been here, and this is a very basic findings. They'll be more elaborate in the future, but what you need to do is go through each of these criteria, which are in the ordinance, and read what the consideration is. So there's what the criteria is, then what you're gonna consider, or what I believe is in the application for you to consider, and then the statement of whether or not it's met, and then you have to take a vote. So if you could go through each of these and just vote, go to each one, does anyone, or you could take it as a poll and say, does anyone have any questions or concerns with each one, whichever is your preference.
Did you want me to read it?
You can,
I'd really rather not, but I can't, I will.
I'm happy to do it if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm kind of.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth.
Does that make sense to you all if I read out? Okay, and then we can take a vote.
Thank you.
So the first one is regarding the floodplain. There aren't any physical improvements.
We cannot hear you.
Right,
Could you
we
come
can't
to
hear.
the side?
It's not that, it's- you're not
Yeah.
really speaking into the speaker,
Yeah,
there's
and-
nothing coming
I
out.
recognize that. I'll do my best.
There you go, that's
Yeah.
a little bit better.
So if it starts making that sound.
Betty, is
you
your
know,
microphone off?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
Somebody else got their mic on.
Turn it on and off, yeah. Off.
Okay, we'll see how we do. So so this project, there aren't any physical site improvements, and so the floodplain will not be impacted. So
Shut that one off.
Is that one
I
on?
think it's this particular microphone.
that's on, that's
Okay.
on.
That's what.
Can you all hear me?
Oh, it's a truck.
Oh, shoot, now I turned it on.
Can
You want
you
it
all
on?
hear me?
Would it be all right
Try.
if we all just moved our chairs down where we could hear you talk?
No, of course, yes. Testing.
Oh, that one's better.
Yeah, I think that was on. I think that.
No, they're off. I think it's just that mic is hot. There's a problem with it.
Yeah. So you may have,
Me
you may want to discuss each of them, but if we could just go through and indicate whether or not you believe the criteria has been met. So there's no impact on the floodplain because there's no physical activity exterior of the building. So if you could do a show of hands or however you want to do that, have a discussion first, because we haven't practiced this yet, but moving forward, we'll create a formal process for it. But tonight's kind of a practice run. So number one, does everyone agree that the floodplain won't be impacted by this project?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, it says that when available, public water and sewer should be provided, and this is currently served by both public water and sewer. We feel that criteria is in there.
Yeah.
Yes.
It asks for adequate erosion control plans, but again, a lot of this is not applicable because it's an existing site that's no physical improvements on the exterior. So erosion control plan was not necessary in this instance. Has that criteria been met?
Yes.
Yes.
Same with the stormwater management plan.
Yeah.
Maybe I should ask if anyone disagrees and assume all the rest are. Does anyone disagree? And, the Cumberland, the Cohasset Watershed District did look at this, and they didn't have any concerns. And added piece of information. Same with the phosphorus control plan. Not applicable in this instance. Anyone agree? Nitrate concentration study, no subsurface, it's on public sewer. Anyone have concerns about that? Okay. The proposed use will not significantly increase trip generation. There was not a traffic study proposed, however, the use was previously office during the day. Now this is gonna be residences which are at more traffic at night. So there shouldn't be an issue with the increased trip generation and traffic. There's no changes to the access drive. Does anyone have concerns that that?
Might want to ask a question.
Yeah.
I am, you said more traffic at night. You're saying that it'll be more nighttime. What about people that are on that road sleeping?
Well, the people will be residing in the building, so it would be the same traffic as other residents. It's gonna be residents now instead of office space.
Huh?
They're talking about downtown.
Oh, no, oh, downtown, oh, okay. I can't hear everything.
And I do apologize, and the council was looking.
No,
at
that's
this.
okay.
Okay, does anyone feel that the traffic
Yeah.
is an issue that has not been addressed?
No problem.
Proper storage, screening, transport, and disposal of solid waste. There's an existing dumpster that serves the site. The only changes that the applicants indicated that they will screen the dumpster to improve the aesthetic. Does anyone have any concerns about solid waste? It's required to have Winthrop Water District approval. There is a letter in the application materials dated 12/3/23 from the Water Utilities District indicating that there is capacity to serve at this location. Does anyone have any concern whether that criteria has been met? Evidence of financial hardship, generally site improvement surety is for improvements on the exterior of the building. We don't ask for assurance of that the building gets built out, and this is an existing building, so that's not applicable in this situation. Again, not applicable. This is regarding, the ordinance says that open space may be required by the board, and that would be for a subdivision. When you're creating lots, we may require open space to be designated, so that standard is not applicable to this project. Does anyone disagree with that? Another standard the board could use in a standard subdivision, and that would be requiring buffer strips. I again would state that that's not applicable to this project. Does anyone disagree with that? Municipal roads and streets, there is no change to the access drive. There's no new streets being created. Like I had said, no more physical improvements. So there's no concerns there. Does anyone believe that has not been met? Number 14 is repealed. Will comply with all applicable provisions of the town of Winthrop zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. The project meets the requirements of the current zoning ordinance, which has been deemed consistent with the Winthrop comprehensive plan. Does anyone feel that it's not consistent with that? The board reserves the right to request additional information. No additional information has been requested at this time. And the last criteria is regarding plan size, and the appropriate size plan is part of the application materials. Does anyone disagree with that statement? So what you've indicated is all the required criteria have been met. So the application therefore would be approved unless you want to have further discussion on any of the items. We could entertain a formal motion to approve or deny if that makes everyone feel more comfortable.
I believe that'd be appropriate.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to make one. I will move case number 23-06. Consideration for request from 134 Main Street LLC, Brandon G. Robards, Newman Homes, for the creation of 7 residential units in an existing building in the Village District located at 134 Main Street on Town Map 31 Lot 69, be approved as submitted.
I'll second that.
Lydia is not here to take the vote. I believe she'll be here.
Just coughing, should be like that.
Yes. You have a witness step in as my chair.
Yeah, right now, yes.
So we got a motion and a second. Jamie second.
Okay.
The further discussion. It's done.
Do we want to put it to a vote?
We get a first and a second.
All
Discussion?
vote? Okay. Approved.
And thank you.
Don, is this a format we're
Anybody
going
else?
to use for all
Nope.
cases or?
In the future, I'd like to have a workshop and we can go over this, go over these
Okay.
types of things,
Yeah.
but yeah, there will be, a template that will be used that you'll be familiar with moving forward.
For each case?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Now I
It'll
get it.
become less awkward. Before you're familiar with it.
Are we missing?
6.
Rosa,
Nobody's on Zoom. I don't see Greg or,
I can't,
Jim.
I think Greg,
all right. Let's check
Yeah.
on them.
and motion carried.
Okay, it has passed. And 139 Main Street, and build the building. I like it. I'm. with the view.
Do we have actual agenda, like an agenda sheet still?
Do you not have an agenda?
I do not. I thought maybe. Mhm.
Oh, I like it. Hey, there, Jean.
I printed out the home.
Very good.
I opened for it, I had paper.
Oh, no, I'm still thinking.
Like, all right, where's it? I'll make a motion. Oh. okay.
5 minutes, it's done. Make it 30.
Yeah.
It's up to the chair.
Susie?
Can I say something about housing real quick in the review you just did?
No, I don't.
It's up to you.
You want to sit up there?
No, I don't want to sit up there, I'll just stand, I'll stand here.
Oh, you may when,
Might
You
want
want to make a
microphone.
statement.
okay, you want.
Yeah, just, it's,
Go right ahead, I'm sorry.
it's okay, I appreciate it, it's late, it's wintry out, it's cold and congestion season, as Stephen German. I really appreciate the process you just went through. One of the things I think when we talk about housing is the need for development of housing all along the continuum of housing, and it sounds like a wonderful market rate development infill in downtown, making use of empty vacant space that can create accessible, usable units for our community. One of the things that I didn't hear discussed though, was any amount of affordability. And when we talk about the continuum of housing, some statistics from the comprehensive plan talk about there's about 770 renter households in the community. 41.5% of them are rent burdened, which means they spend more than 30% of their income on household expenses, which means they're making decisions between where their household budget goes, meals, food, utilities, and other things. And then the other thing that we talk about is the lack of housing that we will have, the deficit of housing that is projected to be in Winthrop in 2030. So obviously needing more housing. But how can we think about making housing that is affordable, accessible, safe and adequate all along the continuum of housing through the use of our regulatory ordinances in our zoning ordinance? I just wanted to talk about that after this discussion where you talked about some of the regulatory components that were buffer strips, traffic compliance, we talked about how do we make it scenic. But one of the things that I did here was a conversation about affordability and accessibility. And if we don't have units that are affordable for the people who will work in our community or for working age parents, that will have significant ramifications down the line for our community. So I just wanted to touch on that as we think about, I know there's a ton on your plate right now, but just wanted to put it on as you're really getting into flexing those ordinance review muscles. I really wanted to put that out there, something we can think about going forward, particularly in light of the new density bonus overlay district. So really appreciate the time. I know you've got a lot on your plate tonight. And thanks so much for the great project that's being brought down.
Thank you. Anyone have to, I'm gonna forget them, nobody's up there.
No, we could probably move that one share move out of the way.
Okay, this is a public hearing of the creation of a mineral extraction ordinance. Dawn is going to go over the questions that we all had from last week, 2 weeks ago. That's the way you want to do it, Dawn?
Well, I know no one's really had a chance to digest this. We're gonna be looking at this together because we just received the changes today. So, we'll go through it. They're highlighted in red and yellow. Joel had worked on that for us based on public input and the board's discussion from the last meeting. So we can go through that, and see where we land at the end of the night. I want to note that, and I know I had given you advance warning or not warning, but let you know in anticipation that we have two gentlemen from the state. They're both from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. We have Michael Clark he's the mining coordinator, and Eric Kennedy, he's from the Bureau of Air Quality, and they are both here. They're not here to give a presentation, but they are here to answer questions. We had a lot of discussion and folks posed a lot of questions that we didn't have the answers to. So they have generously offered their time to come tonight and hopefully help you through that process so you can decide where to land and where to direct the regulation.
Can I be recognized just for a quick comment, Betty, please?
Quick.
Very quick. These folks aren't aware of the changes that were made.
They will be.
They will be, but I just want to take the angst off everybody and take the sting out of the whole thing, right? Some great positive changes were made to the ordinance. And they're gonna go over that this afternoon. Unfortunately, it was tonight. Unfortunately, it was released at 3 o'clock this afternoon, so I didn't get a chance to put it out on Facebook for everybody to take a look at. So that's all I wanted to say.
Oh,
Betty.
okay.
Thank
Okay.
you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Okay.
So do you want to deal with them first, so we're done, they can move on?
The folks at the state? Do you have your questions? Do you feel comfortable that you know what you want to ask? If you are, then that would be kind, kind thing to do, but
You must have.
I always,
So Michael Clark is here to talk about the particulates in the air, is that correct?
Michael Clark, he is the mining coordinator, and Eric Kennedy, and there may be additional people here as well. Eric, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I also have attending David Lemery, who works in our air quality assessment division, as well as Andy Johnson, who also directs the air quality assessment division. And just so you know, I head up the licensing and compliance division in the Bureau of Air Quality.
Thank you. It's gonna scroll down to where a question would be that these folks would have the most help for you on.
I was at page 20 where we're talking about the independent air quality monitoring. I don't know if there's anything before that. No, that was just operating hours.
Okay, this was the big question. Thank you very much.
You wanna ask your question?
I mean, I guess if I were to ask a question, it would be, what beyond what is required by the state, do you think that an independent air quality monitoring unit would be a positive thing? Is it necessary? Is it good as a precaution, just as we're learning about new things that we could potentially be breathing in?
Hi, I'll introduce myself. I'm Mike Clark. I'm the mining coordinator with the state. First of all, my wife got me these new glasses for my laptop, and they have that bluish tint. And to me, all I see is that I look like a slee stack with the blue eyes. I don't know if you guys see that, but I'll only use them if I have to read. The lighting behind me is not great. In any event, to address your question, I can only speak to what the state performance standards are called that are required under the licensing of quarries. And ambient air monitoring is not one of those requirements, so I can't speak to that. The folks here from the Air Bureau probably have some experience with that kind of monitoring, so they may chime in, but I can't speak to it with respect to the regulations that I implement.
Yeah, and from the Bureau of Air Quality standpoint, I mean, we have ambient air quality monitors around the state measuring air quality. We don't typically require ambient air quality monitoring near sources unless there's an particular issue that we think there may be some kind of health concern there. And David can jump in. We have done some monitoring around areas that we've gotten complaints about. And we typically use what's called an air sensor to get an idea of whether there's an issue there or not that we should do further monitoring for. But David, I'll let you jump in there.
Yeah, so for some complaints or community monitoring, we will typically use a kind of a low-cost sensor. Purple Airs are relatively well known air monitoring. They do a decent job for just alleviating concerns, I guess. They're pretty user friendly, and they can fill in a lot of holes and the gaps of regulatory monitors. If it's a concern from the public, concern from the town about air quality relating to airborne particulate matter, a Purple Air or another low-cost sensor could help alleviate concerns.
Can I ask, what did you say, Purple Airs?
Purple Air, so purple like the color, and then air, A-I-R.
Making sure I heard that right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you had any experience in this area with anyone becoming sick due to the air particles?
Not that I'm aware of. We license facilities around the state. We generally license from an air quality standpoint, places that have rock crushers, asphalt batch plants, concrete batch plants. Occasionally we do get complaints about some of them. We work with the complainants and the facilities to address those complaints. But I'm not aware of anybody that's really gotten sick from living near one of these plants.
Thank you. During blasting, is there a lot of more, dust and whatever in the air, and if so, how far does it go?
I can speak to that somewhat. I don't attend a lot of blast events, but I have been to some, and there have been an occasional complaint of dust from a blast event. Blast events are very common, so I wouldn't be able to tell you the frequency by which dust complaints are generated, but they're infrequent, generally speaking. Blasting is the one activity at a quarry where there's really not a lot that can be done to suppress dust because it's such a large area. Dust must be suppressed from traffic and from crushing operations as a general practice. But I have spoken with blasting operators before in response to dust complaints, and generally it's prescriptive operation standards of watching literally which way the wind blows and conducting blast events on days when the wind is favorable. Dust usually dissipates fairly quickly, obviously depending on the wind velocity and direction. So that's about the extent I have for that.
And speaking from the Bureau of Air Quality side, we do get complaints sometimes, but in my knowledge, we have not gotten many complaints, if any, that I'm aware of from blasting operations in particular. Most of the complaints are from road dust going into rock crushing operations or operations like that, or just the operation of the crushers themselves. If they're not properly sprayed with water, you can get dust from those types of operations. But blasting, we very rarely get complaints about.
So when we blast, how long approximately do the particulates stay in the air? Before they fall to the ground?
Well, from an air quality standpoint, obviously the heavier particles fall out closer to where the blasting would occur. The lighter particles, you have a range of particle sizes that get emitted when you crush or blast rock. The lighter particles, the ones that are so small you can't even see them, in the what we call the PM 2.5 size, which is particles less than 2.5 microns in size. I mean, those can travel for miles. Particulate matter that small just is so light that depending on the wind velocity and direction, it can certainly travel for miles.
So actually, to have an accumulation of someone's lungs, they'd have to be around every time there was blasting from someplace.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, neither did I.
I have a question. So about the PM 2.5, so I know that you said that people will typically complain because they'll see the dust. If you can't see it, what kind of consideration would be made to possibly prevent that? Would it just be monitoring for it, or is there some reason why it wouldn't be monitored?
We do monitor for PM 2.5 at our monitors around the state.
Just not at the individual sites?
Correct.
Okay. So would that be because you're saying if there was an increase in it at like the site in Augusta where they monitor it, it would automatically kind of alert you to something local is doing that? Like what? Because I just don't see how that can tell you like this crushing and blasting specifically would be increasing it.
Yeah, it wouldn't, it wouldn't tell you a specific source that's causing the issue, but it monitors the air quality in general in the state of Maine.
I think the reason I'm asking is that a lot of folks are very concerned that if they live around this area, this small particulate that they can't see could potentially make people sick, and maybe beforehand would never even have realized that it was from the blasting. So I think that's just kind of what we're trying to work out on our end to make people feel safe. I mean, have you heard of any townships before adding like a monitor for this at sites like this in their ordinances, or is this like the first time you've heard of that?
I have not heard of any other towns doing something like that, no.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I've got a question. Since you can monitor for these 2.5 and below particles, since there is a big concern here, would you be able to monitor this area, say when this operation starts up, they've got a spray system and all? We don't know if it's necessarily taking these out or not. Is it possible you could do some testing while they're crushing the area, just to kind of alleviate some of the concerns of our citizens?
Yeah, so, I guess,
Not talking continuous, just initially. Baseline, yeah.
what we would probably actually start out doing if this was something that we were to take the lead on is using some of those purple air devices that I mentioned earlier to, set them up at, nearby residences or, places of business that, are willing to host us. They, require, an outlet and connection to internet, which honestly is our biggest siting issue with these sometimes, so. But, these purple airs are pretty small. They're fit inside a 2-inch PVC cap. That's actually how we purchased them. That's how Purple Air sells them. So, they can go pretty much anywhere to measure air quality when there is a concern. And, depending on what we would see there, that would determine how we proceed forward. If we need, something regulatory, or, it's, not really a concern, and, we can remove our purple airs, or, recommend, longer term monitoring with the purple airs.
Are they very costly?
There are two models. One's like $220 and the other is like $260 or something like that. They're pretty cheap, but they only last about 2 years.
I looked online at one, I can't remember the name of it, but if I remember right, it wasn't Purple Air. I'm pretty sure it would connect with the internet, so you didn't have to have anybody go there and actually read it.
I think you said it connects to Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, seems to me one of them I thought could be solar powered too, but I'm not sure of that. I'm gonna read that up, but that might be an option. I don't know if these purple airs can be done that way or not.
Yeah, there are third-party vendors that will sell solar panels for them, but there are other vendors out there. One in particular is Clarity. They do have a bigger cost associated with them. They'll have PM25, a dedicated cell network with a solar panel. So it's a little bit easier to set up, but it's going into a few thousand a year.
I suppose as cheap as these are, you're better off to just find a place to plug them in, because where we're worried is where people are living, so I'm sure we can find an outlet.
Yeah, I think a big concern is we don't know what we don't know, is what everybody is kind of putting forward, like what happens 10 years down the line when we find out more information and figure out. I understand the concern for that, and it's not a large cost, not to the town, but to the potential applicant. I personally, why not err on the safe side?
Can we ask any questions?
I think we're gonna do a public afterward. We have to wait for Betty to come back.
yes,
Their opinion I was seeking.
Yeah,
I have some questions regarding that if we were to look at the monitoring with purple air approach. And as I understand it, the state regs for monitoring are the visible dust emissions. I think it's a 20% opacities limit. Correct me if I'm wrong, certainly, but that obviously will not pick up the 2.5 particulates, which may hang around after some of the larger ones fall out, certainly. But if we were to monitor those with some device, what sort of standards would we be looking at as far as action limits, regulatory limits, or what have you? Any suggestions on that?
Well, we have ambient air quality standards for particulate matter, two different types, PM10, which are a little bit larger, larger than the PM 2.5, but we also have standards for PM 2.5. So that's what we would be comparing whatever was monitored to. And David, you can jump in if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, so I might have misunderstood one thing you said, but the purple air monitors will measure PM2.5. But yeah, as Rick was saying, PM2.5 and PM10 have national ambient air quality standards to go to. For PM2.5, it's about 35 micrograms for 24-hour average, and PM10 is 150 micrograms. These are meter cube for a 24-hour average.
Question then on this type of monitor, the standard being a 24-hour average, do these, how do these monitors work? Do they monitor and give you a 24-hour average, or do they give you a spot reading? What exactly would we expect to see with this?
Yeah, they do continuous monitoring. They'll give you, I think it's down to 2-minute averages, but those can be very noisy. When we look at it, we will look at 1-hour averages, and then if we have concerns, we'll look at 24-hour averages, determine assessment to the air quality standard.
So, if we look at the shorter average, say 2-minute, 10-minute, 1 hour, that by itself isn't particularly meaningful as far as the overall risk then, is it? Is it something where if we did that, and again, we're struggling with whether this is, feasible, appropriate, or necessary, but if we were to take this approach, it would be appropriate to look at a 24-hour average, because I guess if we do this, we're gonna have to put some kind of numbers on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, David. Yeah.
I was going to say I didn't really catch a question out of there, so go ahead, Eric.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, the standard, like David mentioned, the health-based standard that the National Ambient Air Quality Standard is on a 24-hour average basis. It doesn't mean that shorter term information isn't, useful. It's just that we don't have any health-based ambient standard to compare to shorter term averages than a 24-hour average.
And I guess it would sort of leave me wondering if how we might apply a number, but yeah, I do understand that situation, and you know, it sounds like, yeah, this might be something that could be appropriate monitor, but at this point, I guess we would struggle as to what we might want to look at for action limits, and obviously, you know, anything less than a 24-hour average, we might have to come up with some sort of other action limit that might be appropriate at this point. I'm not sure what it is, but yeah, I appreciate the input. Again, I really had no clear idea what these devices were capable of, but now these devices typically run continuously and then give you a preset average, or are they usually run intermittently? How are they typically used?
As long as they're connected to power and internet, it will be a continuous measurement.
Now, would that be recorded somewhere on somebody's computer, or is that recorded on the instrument? Could you?
Yeah. So Purple Air, the vendor that makes these, have their kind of official Purple Air map that's publicly available. So as long as the sensor is set up to be publicly available versus a private sensor, anyone in town could go to the website, look at this map, look at the data.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, if you go to Purple Air's website, you know, you can see where all the Purple Air monitors are located around Maine, around the country, if you want.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. We might want to look into it. Now, again, you know, with consideration for this and for, you know, a bird non-operator, there's obviously a cost initially for the unit. Is there a subscription for this service, or how does that work?
For the users, there's no subscription. You can set it up and it will work automatically. They do have subscription-based stuff, but that's for people pulling large amounts of data. So that wouldn't apply to you guys.
I can send you guys the thing. I pulled up the map. I can forward it to you all. The site,
Yeah.
and it shows different areas around, and it gives you the data there for the little site. So Rockland right now, don't go to Rockland. It's in the red. Everybody else seems all right.
Where's one posted about the citizen text really bad in the air? Where do we go? Who do we call?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Hey, since this operation is only gonna be run in the daytime and not on weekends, other than maybe some trucking, how would that work as far as the allowable limits? I would think you'd want to be below whatever the standard is, 2.5 and below, during the operation of the thing. If you average it out over 24 hours, there's nothing going on. That'll bring you could be putting out quite a bit of stuff. And
I think what they were saying is you could break down the data, like you can look at it. They do their basis by 24 hours. But you could break it down to within that 2 hour period, if I'm not mistaken, if that's what you guys said. Or you could look into like what happened between 12 and 3. Was it very high? Was I right on that or no?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
We have to define what's high for a
Right.
8 hour period.
Exactly.
In 2 minutes out of 24 hours ain't very much. They're doing 2 minutes.
Right, you'd average it out over
Exactly.
how to operate. That's
You can
my
do it
point.
at night and there's no action.
So, you really wanna know what they're putting out.
well, it does monitor it 24 hours a day.
It does, but we wanna know what
Constantly.
it's putting out into the neighborhoods during operation.
Yeah, they're saying that you could do that. You could look at the data and change it and monitor it and look between the operating hours or when they blast.
And that's why I think the 2 hour average would be good.
But there's no, as I understand it from the department standpoint, there's no standard for that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, 2 hour average.
You could be putting out harmful dust for 8 hours during the day. And then when you average it out for the whole day, when the other
Exactly.
16 hours, we're not doing anything.
Percentage goes.
Yeah, so we would have to kind of look at that.
What are you gonna do if you find a dangerous level?
Exactly.
Where are you gonna go to get some regulation on it to stop it?
Well, that would come to the state because they have a regulation already.
What is the? Who do we call? How quick would the response be?
I don't know. I would assume it would go to Mark or the town itself or right to the state. I don't know. Yeah,
If we could separate and have public comment and questions and have the board, be able to finish it. It's getting too many conversations going on at once. Not that we won't be able to ask your question, but if we could just do the board first and then entertain the public.
If the town does go in the direction of adopting requirements for gravel and mining monitoring, is the department available to provide some level of technical assistance if we need help either setting up locations of monitors or helping us interpret data? And I know you've got a full-time job to do, but I'm also thinking that we're a lay board that's not well versed in this, and we want to be able to address concerns from the citizens, and they're legitimate concerns, I think, so.
yeah, we could probably provide some limited assistance. I can also provide resources online. EPA has, it's like a 4-page kind of set up your sensor guidance, and then there's like a substantial 200-page document for more in depth. But as far as, setting it up, finding good locations that would be representative of the area, we can provide some guidance on that and, provide insight and, how to look at the data as well.
Thank you.
I'm kind of thinking if these monitors did show an excessive amount of dust, it's probably going to be due to the operation to some of the sprays are plugged or they're not the right nozzles, something like that. But I don't think it's something that you gotta have somebody there in the middle of the night. I mean, it's not like we're breathing this in for a long period of time. It would stop and it'd have to be corrected, so. But I probably would be Mark. He's coming down, so we got it corrected. But we're not there yet.
I have a question regarding the air licenses that are issued for crushing operations. What sort of requirements are for the dust control? What is typically done? Is that specifications on the spray equipment and the crusher? How is that managed? I have not really seen an air license for this stuff before.
Yeah, we have, all of our air licenses for crushers are pretty similar. We have 2 types of licenses that we issue. One is what's called a general permit for crushing operations that move from place to place their portable crushing operations. And we have a regulation that has all the requirements listed in that general permit regulation that the owners and operators have to comply with. And then there's a what we call our Chapter 115 licensing. That's our regular air emission license for more larger stationary type operations that really don't move. They stay within one location. They might move within the site a little bit, but they're pretty much at one location. And those licenses also have requirements to minimize fugitive dust, requirements for using spray nozzles to minimize fugitive dust on rock crushing operations, transfer belts, screens, those types of things. We also require facilities to have what's called a dust management or best practices plan to spell out how they control their fugitive dust emissions, whether it be through wetting down the roads or applying calcium chloride or using water to control fugitive dust. There are, if you want to take a look at some examples of licenses, they're on our website under Bureau of Air Quality. You can look at any license for any facility that we have.
In regards to the spray system, say on the crushers, are those supplied by the crusher manufacturer? Or are there companies that will design those for the conditions that we have? Or is it up to the operator just to put some
it's up to the owner operator to supply those, however, whether it's from a third party company to supply them. They're not that complicated. They're basically water lines going to spray nozzles and spraying down the dust, keeping the materials wet.
So the nozzles aren't specifically designed for a particular application then?
No, I mean,
and they say it's important to design the system with the proper nozzles to achieve that. I don't know if that's just somebody trying to sell the system or if that's true.
yeah, we don't get into the specifics of the design. If it either is doing its job or it's not. If we find out that it's not, then it's up to the owner to remedy that.
Yes, a monitor. Right there.
In your licenses, there requirement for staff available on site that's trained in monitoring the dust levels, or is that just is that specified in your license, or is that just assumed that they're going to have people that know what they're doing?
Yeah, in our licenses, we generally put a requirement in there for someone to be on site that has been trained to read visible emissions. Basically, every 6 months, they have to get certified to be able to read visible emission levels so that they can know whether or not they're in compliance with the visible emission limitations.
Is that training done by the department or is that done elsewhere? I know when I was there, I never involved personally, but I recall folks referring to, I believe they call it smoke school.
Yeah.
They do the visible emissions training.
Yeah, it's done by an environmental consulting company here in Maine. I think the same environmental company has done smoke school for many years. So they're well knowledgeable and trained in how to train people to read visible emissions.
Thanks.
For public questions.
I'm all set.
Does anyone have anything else on the board? Anyone on the board have anything else? Say it for me.
We need to find some sort of microphone for everybody though, because this one's not working.
Let me see.
And I know people on Zoom are gonna wanna hear.
Step closer to the owl. Up in front here, because that's my.
Oh, yeah.
Can you see if that works as well? Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. That's the extent of my knowledge right there.
Take that for the rest of the first time I went.
Take that. Take that one. That was a great idea.
It's a little awkward.
It's gonna sleep.
I don't know.
You're wrong.
Yes.
You're wrong. How about you, Rob?
Yeah. I'm on.
I guess just step up and have some questions.
I have a quick question, just procedurally, are we going to public
Yes.
comment just on the air quality component of this? Then let the DEP folks go, and then we'll start having another board discussion on the remainder of the
Yes.
ordinance.
That'd be the best.
It's up to
Yeah.
all of you, but that sounds better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the other portion of this question or this subject is open. Oh, can you hear me? I'm sorry. Okay. It was open for questions.
I got a question.
Would you just identify yourself?
Well, I don't really have to stand up next to a mic, I got a mouth. The 2.5 microns that are going into the air.
Could you identify yourself?
Dust, what's that?
Could you identify yourself, please?
Oh, Wayne Hopkins.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. I'm not used to this stuff. Oh, there we go. The 2.5 microns going into atmosphere and so on and so forth. What's the percentage per ton of dust that's in that 2% or 2.5 microns? What's the percentage of that in the air compared to regular, just all the dust combined? Is it 50% of it? Is it 10%? Is it 40%? I mean, is there any known what percentage it is?
No, it really depends on a lot of different factors. I can't give you a hard and fast percentage for what make up the 2.5% and under is of dust that may be emitted.
So it's basically unknown what we really are gonna be putting into the air compared to what's gonna go 20 feet because it's too heavy and drop out. So we really don't know the total effect of what that 2.5 microns is gonna do. Or how much there is, basically, that's what is there any way to find that out?
Well, there could be, but I think it would require a lot more effort on the monitoring side to do that. I think you would have to do what, and David can probably pipe in here, but reference method type monitors. Some types of those monitors actually have filters that collect the dust particles that are being sampled. And you could collect those samples on these filters and then look at them under a microscope to be able to tell the portion of different size particles, but that's certainly a lot more involved and a lot more effort.
Wouldn't that be worth the health of people in the area? I mean, do you want people to have, like I have COPD, now if I'm right next to it, it's gonna really screw me up. Rick might not have COPD, it might not bother him in the very least. You know, there's a lot of unknowns, and another question for that 2-minute test every so often. Now, how often is that test done? The 2-minute test to find out what particulates are in the air?
Well, I think as David said, the purple air monitors that he was talking about, that's a continuous monitoring device. So it's continuously monitoring.
So is somebody checking that every day to find out what the number is?
It's right on the website. It's pretty cool, actually, just to
No,
show
I'm
you.
not saying it's not cool. I'm just curious, you know?
Anybody could look at it anytime and it tells you by now, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 6 hours, and by the week, the averages, if you click on
Just
the.
to clarify, just because the information is available.
Was that 24-hour? Cause if
Well,
that's
yeah.
only an 8-hour shift, they're monitoring the air quality. And you add it all together to a 24-hour day, makes a big difference. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a scientist.
But no, they wouldn't be monitoring it.
No.
That's not,
Change the average at every 2 hours, actually.
yeah,
You would just look at those 2 hours.
No, like I said, that's a continuous, they'll have to give you a 2-hour average every 2 hours.
Bill, I think this gentleman's next. I think this gentleman here is next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Then you're next.
The gentleman that was speaking about the dust, did I understand you that it's the applicant and the operator of the crushing and gravel operation that's solely responsible for the dust control?
Yes.
Oh, the nozzles, there's nothing that is gonna make him comply, as this gentleman said, for the proper pattern and spray and that sort of thing. And if we do have someone that has the time, and does that website show dangerous spikes? Like a lot of times when you're working with computers and you're monitoring something, if there's a high spike, alarm will come up. And we'll tell somebody, we got a problem here. Does that software, and I know I'm not good on computers. Does that software, to your knowledge, provide a spike warning? Somebody can observe, like if it's really out of hand or the wind is blowing. And incidentally, on this road where this operator is going, I've lived there over 36 years. The predominant path of wind in the summer, I can always tell, it's hot and humid, it comes southerly. This operation is in the middle of the neighborhood. So any southerly wind is gonna be bringing dust right up into the residence. It's gonna be right next to the road. It's gonna follow the road right up and get us. And one last thing, where they've cut their northerly property line on this quarry project is about 3 lengths of this room from a whole bunch of houses. And does anybody know the name of that road? Is it Quarry Lane or Buzzell Lane that comes off Turkey Lane and it heads westerly? Buzzell Lane. Okay, well, there's houses from that wall to about where your screen is, from where he has a line. And he's cut wood, he can actually excavate and crush rock to that point. I don't think people on a hot summer day with any kind of breeze are even gonna be able to open their windows on the south side of the house. Unless he really has a handle on this, and it's up to him to have a handle on it. So that would kind of concern me, and thank you for your time.
Okay, Gil.
Thank you. I'm Gil Susi. Mike, nice to see you face to face. And gentlemen, thank you, David and Eric, thank you for being here tonight. The angst that the neighborhood has is that in this particular application, where it might come back up on Turkey Lane particular application, it stands at about 475 feet of elevation. And the prevailing wind patterns end up bringing some of these PM 2.5 particulates right over the middle school and the high school playing fields, which are about a mile away and about 150 feet downstream. And we know that stuff flows downhill eventually. But I guess some of the questions I've got is Maine currently in violation of the National Ambient Air standards that are currently out there?
No, all of Maine is in attainment for all of the national ambient air quality standards.
All right, and where's the nearest PM 2.5 monitoring station in relation to Winthrop?
I'd probably say Augusta would be the closest, but there's also Lewiston and Rumford.
So about 10 miles away, Augusta as the crow flies. The angst that we have is that, again, the EPA has identified these 2.5, PM 2.5 particulate matters as causing heart attacks, strokes, and all that. They've reduced the national standard by 25%. MSHA, OSHA, NIOSH are all reducing their standards if they haven't reduced them already on the respirable silicates that are also part of the crushing, drilling, blasting operation. It is, so I hope you can understand why we're asking some of these questions and why we would like to have monitoring at that site. If not to ensure that the residents don't get it, to at least ensure that the children that attend the middle school, the high school, don't get exposed too severely to this. And I know a couple of breaths of this stuff isn't probably not gonna kill you, but exposure over, a decade or so could end up being rather dangerous from all the research that I've read on that. So, again, they're mostly comments and really not trying to sell you air monitors, but the idea of air monitors came up. Again, $300 Wi-Fi available, pole mounted, outside, German-made air monitors. We thought that was a pretty inexpensive way of dealing or reassuring the public. But at the same time, if it doesn't sound like you have a program for this, or other towns have done something like this. So we would have to rely on you to give us the air quality standards. I mean, we're relying on, an ordinance that says the operator will follow the air quality standards. And I don't think anybody in this room right now can tell you what that standard is for particulate matter. So we will have to be leaning pretty heavily on you. So, Betty, I guess that's all I've got for now. Folks have asked some great questions, so I do appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you both for being online.
Next, right there. We're gonna go this way, I guess.
Hi, my name is Karina Richards. I've lived on Turkey Lane for 25 years, which is the majority of my life. I have a question, and I apologize if this has already been asked. In the possible event that the site exceeds these limits of PM 2.5 that are permitted, what are the consequences of this? Would the project be shut down, or do they just get a warning, or is that something that the town decides?
I think from a monitoring standpoint, if you were to do some monitoring near the site and that showed some potential issues with the standard, level of the standard, then we would probably get more involved in putting a reference type method monitor there to really dial in on what the levels are. Is what I would think. David, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, if there is violations to, or I guess elevated values consistently, then that would pique our interest for requiring a reference type monitor.
I mean, the other thing is we would also work work to minimize whatever's causing those elevated levels with whatever facility is causing that.
Thank you.
There you go. You all set? Wanna go this way?
Not right now.
Not right now? Bill's already. You wanna? Okay.
Hi, my name is Scott Knox. I spoke a few weeks ago on this at the hearing in favor of reducing the hours and the maximum noise levels. And after I left, I thought, I'm confused about how did we get here and where is this headed? When I left this process, I mean, I was at many hearings and I've been involved in, I have the overwhelming impression that there's an applicant who wants to do something now to do with a quarry and a rock crushing operation. There may be other applicants who want to do others in the town. And against that one person, there was hundreds of people who spoke in this room and on the internet and elsewhere that are opposed to crushing and blasting in Winthrop for a lot of reasons. Some of them sort of solid reasons. There's things that would certainly happen. I happen to be concerned about noise, and the noise is going to happen. The levels are there that are permitted. But so a lot of people spoke, communicated a lot of reservation, or they don't want blasting. They don't want quarrying in the town, never mind Turkey Lane. And so we come back and I see there was a 37-page regulation and somebody who's gotten paid to make a document which may get approved because it's being revised. And what worries me is, did we ask the right question? Are we, is the process heading in a direction that if this document, if and when it gets approved, or does the planning board make a recommendation that the town council adopt this? And if the town council votes, does the town council make that ordinance become, legitimate ordinance? Is that how that goes? And there's still the zoning ordinance. There's a table of permitted uses. And one of those permitted uses about halfway down the page is mining. And there's a little X box over there. It's permitted in rural zone only and only with permission of the planning board. And I kind of thought that where this was headed a year ago was either the planning board or the council was going to look at the zoning ordinance and make that X go away. Say, no, it's not, mining is not a permitted use in the town. And by removing one X, one revision to the zoning ordinance, that would sort of meet what I sense is the public sentiment around this. So I get a process question. We're working on, or you're working on a draft mining extraction ordinance. Is someone working on, or is it on the table to change the zoning ordinance to eliminate mining operations as a permitted use in the town?
I believe we were told by KV Cog that we're not allowed to outright ban something of that nature.
So it's not a part of this group's process.
Yeah.
And who is it that has sign off on the zoning ordinance? If the zoning ordinance were to be changed in that way or any other way, is it the planning board or the town council that has to approve that?
I believe the town council would discuss it and vote on it, and it would go to, or the planning board would, and then it would go to the town council. Or the town council could just vote on it,
Don't they
I
meet on
believe,
that?
independently.
Isn't there?
So generally what happens is the council, it could happen a number of different ways, but one of the ways is the council could direct the planning board to make amendments to look at whatever it is that they're looking at. Or you could institute it, but after you hold the required public hearing, whatever you send back to the council as advisory, you say, this is what we think for the language and here's our recommendations. The council will then take that under consideration. They hold their own public hearing and ultimately they are the ones that adopt the ordinance. They could make changes from what you propose or not, or they may not adopt it, but they do have the ultimate say as to whether it gets.
Is that easy?
So it could come from the council, so the townspeople could lean on the town council to take it up and urge the planning board to revisit it. Okay.
I think that's kind of how we got to the town council asked us to do an ordinance in the first place, because we didn't do this, the town council.
Yeah, but what's worried me
asked
is
us
now we may, a scenario here is that you could wind up with a mineral extraction ordinance that gets approved by the planning board and get recommended to the council approves it. An applicant comes along, a new applicant, let's say, and just as happened today with the one about, the property on Main Street. The planning board goes through here's a list of 37 things, you know, should we check off and does this applicant, have they satisfied all 37 items? If yes, then de facto approved. And that, these are sort of limitations on bad things that people have said they don't want to have happen. And, limitations on the noise, limitations on the dust, limitations on the traffic, on the safety, on this and that thing. But, I don't think that'd be a good government process myself. I don't get it. I think that somehow the sentiment of a lot of people are being perhaps ignored. If the way this process goes is you wind up with this kind of an ordinance and then an applicant meets all the criteria, and all of a sudden we have blasting and we have blasting and crushing operations in the town that really a lot of people said they didn't want. That's my concern.
I think that what this gentleman is missing is the fact that by statute, if you ban something outright, you're opening the town up to legal fees. If anybody knows what the town would pay for legal fees already, we don't wanna, if you enact an ordinance that's debatable in court and you would end up losing, they're gonna throw the whole thing out. So you just can't, I think, if I understand the guy from Kennebec, KB Cog, he reiterated this several times while I was watching, that you just cannot do that by statute.
Agreed.
That's my understanding as well.
Any other public questions for you?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Any other public questions about this subject?
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe we
Oh,
try and
the
keep it
air
on
quality.
the-
Yeah.
On the air monitor.
That's right, we did skip, didn't we? Anyone have a question on which, the first subject?
Air quality.
Air quality, there you go.
Still on air quality.
We just want to make sure that any questions that we have for these gentlemen,
Or they
we get them so they can.
And I do have a question for them,
Okay,
if that's okay.
yes.
All right. Sorry, I'm back. Sorry, Ed. The town has the right to take your minimum standards and build up on that. Is that correct?
That's correct, yep. The performance standards that are required under a notice of intent to comply are state level only. Home rule allows a municipality to enact an ordinance, and there's no overlap.
So as long as we, meet your minimums, we can all increase, let's say, decrease the noise levels to 10 decibels. Not that we're gonna do that, but you know, you have standards, but we can beef those up and make them a little bit more protective of the public health.
That's my understanding, correct?
All right, thank you, Mike.
I would caution you on making it too big, because that's where the lawsuits start to come in, is when we say, no, we want this, it's higher, it's higher, it's higher. And then we make it so the person can't even do business. That's when it's a real problem. Am I correct? Yeah.
I think that's too general of a statement for me to give you my
Oh, is it?
response to, yeah.
Okay.
All right, speak
Anybody?
again. Wayne Hopkins again, and add a little bit to what he was just saying. For the air quality, you say there's a meter in Augusta that's for the 2.5 microns that go into the air. Now, that's quite a ways for heavy material to travel to begin with. That's like putting a smoke alarm down my garage for my house. I mean, it's not close enough. Now, can we somehow get a monitoring system up towards the high school and the grade school where it really counts? Because if the kids get affected by this 30 years down the road, who's gonna be at fault? Can we get something a little closer than Augusta? Don't everybody speak at once.
Madam Chair, I believe what we're talking about is, does the town want to provide something close to themselves?
Right.
And they just.
You can't
We're not asking them to provide additional monitoring. The question is, do we want to provide our own monitoring?
I would think we would, if we got kids, I got a kid in high school, I don't want him breathing bad quality air all the time. I got friends and nephews and nieces that are in high school, don't want them breathing it all the time. If we can have, if the kids are that important to this town, we should have a monitoring system in the town to monitor the 2.5 microns for them. Not so much for us old people, time's limited, so I ain't really care myself, my time's almost done. But we gotta do something for the kids, Augusta's too far away, Augusta will never see the amount of 0.25 particulates in the air that we will out here in Winthrop.
I'd like to add just a comment on that, just for clarification. The 2.5 particulate is not a heavy particulate. That is the very light one that's going to travel for many miles. The ones that drop out soon, the ones that drop out in winter are going to be the larger ones that pretty much the visible ones. So I think it's kind of erroneous thinking that the 2.5 isn't going to make it to Augusta. In fact, it's probably going to go.
Thank you.
Go to Augusta and beyond. So they are actually, I think, doing a fairly serviceable job of monitoring at 2.5 because that stuff, and I'm sure the Air Bureau folks may correct me on that, but the 2.5 travels many miles.
I have one more short one for them if I can. Ron Manuel again. Would you consider as the agency, the EPA, if it was requested by the town for you to set up one of your monitors at that site or in the neighborhood of that site? And the reason I'm asking that is if the applicant isn't in compliance, I think when he hears from you guys, he's gonna pay attention. So that's what I'm asking. Can you do that or would you consider that?
So one of our reference methods, those are, I guess, a considerable lift in terms of, staff time, materials. So we would recommend, purple airs first. If they show something, then we could follow up with one of the reference methods.
Well, as I wanted to ask before also, if we have the purple air monitors, we supply them ourselves, somebody volunteers and we have a network watching this, you still haven't told us, or at least I've asked the question, what path do we have, or what portal do we have that has any power to get these people to stop or to honor the ordinance? We don't know. Who do we call at EPA? Can you give us a contact point, a phone number that we can depend on when this thing gets out of hand, if it does, where something's gonna get done? I think that's a concern of anybody that realizes how much you guys have got on your hands and how short-handed everybody is. Thanks again.
Yeah, I think, we're always available if there are concerns about any facility in your town. You can always call us. We respond to, the public all around the state, complaints all around the state. So we certainly are available and you can certainly call us.
Thank you.
Any more questions on subject of air quality?
Now, address a question to the DEP folks.
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to pose, I guess, a question or comment to the DEP folks. So the way I understand it, that you would not be generally inclined to set up an air monitoring survey for an operation as routinely. However, if you were to get some legitimate complaints from the town or from the nearby residents, that you would be inclined to investigate that?
Yeah, we investigate any complaint that we get. Whether we go to the next level of doing some monitoring depends on what we find and what we think. If we think there may be some levels there that would warrant monitoring.
From the mining program standpoint, you can contact either the Air Bureau or myself or my coworker. And if it's in relation to dust, there is the standard that a quarry has to control dust. We would look at it from that standpoint, obviously without having a requirement of ambient air monitoring, we would look at it from a visible emission standpoint. And most likely, if we thought that there was a 20% exceedance, we would consult with our coworkers in the Air Bureau staff to verify, because they deal with that more often than Eric, my staff person, and I do. So either one of the bureaus can be contacted on a visible emission, heavy dust type of complaint. But if you're interested in continuing your ordinance to have ambient air monitoring, then it sounds like the folks in the Air Bureau are there to assist you in that endeavor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question and then we're gonna move on.
Steve Robbins, how many, just take a wild guess, how many quarry pit operations does the state have that come under these guidelines?
It depends on which guidelines you're referring to. The performance standards for quarries, which encompasses, most of the regulations regarding quarries have to do with land use, the actual excavation. But as we've mentioned, there are dust standards, there's noise standards. I don't know off the top of my head the exact number of registered licensed quarry operations. In particular, I don't know the exact number of ones that employ crushing units, but it's up there. We have over 900 total licensed excavations in the state. That includes gravel pits and quarries, and the majority are gravel pits, but I would hazard a guess around 100 licensed quarries, of which a decent percentage are going to operate a crusher, if not continuously or on a yearly operating basis, on a once in a while to crush material with a mobile source basis.
So right now we're talking about air quality. So of these 900 some odd licensed facilities, how many of those is air monitoring a concern? All of them?
Well, it's not, air monitoring is not required by the performance standards. So again, what we will typically get, particularly in a dry year, breezy day, is a dust complaint, typically coming off the road or a stockpile, or perhaps a crushing operation. In a crushing operation or a screening operation in a gravel pit, those are the units that are going to have an air emissions license first off, but also our performance standards require use of spray bars, the use of water for truck traffic in and out of the facility, that sort of thing. So to answer your question about is it a concern, concern is a subjective relative term. It's a requirement in the standards, and if we get a complaint and investigate and verify that there's a dust issue, then in my experience, most operators are pretty quick to address that, because they don't want the publicity, as they say.
So what you're saying is that these operations are not necessarily monitored, but they're licensed, and the only response is when there's a complaint. So there's no.
Pits and quarries are inspected, but it's an overall inspection for compliance with the performance standards of their license status.
And that includes air quality?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
And that includes air quality?
It only includes, from the mining unit standpoint, when we inspect a pit or a quarry, we're looking at it when we're there, and we're looking at whether or not, if, for example, crushing or operations are going on while we're there, are spray bars in place and being used to control dust or not. That's just a standard item that we'll look at. If somebody in the neighborhood or what have you calls in a complaint, then we'll respond to that and do an inspection while we're there, or take an assessment while we're there. So again, if I missed your point, your question, air monitoring is not an ongoing requirement. There's no performance standard that requires a pit or a quarry to do any kind of ongoing air monitoring.
Right.
And from the Bureau of Air Quality, we also have air compliance inspectors. So whatever facilities we have licensed, we have the ability to go in and do inspections of those facilities. I will tell you that we spend most of our time inspecting larger sources around the state. So we don't typically visit some of the smaller rock crushing operations unless there's an issue, unless we get complaints about it. But
I think
we do try to get to some of the smaller facilities as we can.
I think what you said is that around 900 operations are required to meet the standards. Is that a fair assessment? Somewhere around 900, could be 800.
Well, we have around that number of registered excavations in the state, and all that are registered are required to meet a set of performance standards. Again, most of those performance standards have to do with the buffers to property lines, buffers to roads. But yes, there are dust control standards and there are noise standards. So yes, any licensed excavation is required to meet all of the performance standards to satisfactory compliance. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next subject. What was it? I think I was coughing at the time. Next subject.
Yeah, so I just want to thank the gentleman again so much for your time tonight. I think it's been very helpful to this process and the boards, assisting them and making the right decisions.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Was it for someone particular? Because I know we lost some people.
No,
Mike-
it was not for them.
Oh,
That's why I wanted you to be.
we can take other comment. We just wanted to use their time.
That's exactly.
Yeah, we can continue discussion and take that.
Yeah.
I think we'll take a 5-minute break right now, please. Because he's in the board.
No, Greg was unable to make it after all, so. Oh, sorry. He was moving.
What is the next one?
I'm gonna go through them right now. So if we could run through the handful of amendments that they highlighted, and see if there actually there's any questions around it, and then even if you could give staff some general direction and what we'd like to do in terms around local monitoring, then just we can come up with more language, because we don't have anything right now.
Actually, the part of the problem is yeah, isn't here ever to maybe stop. They were.
I can't hear one for any.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's not
Probably decided. You're also in kindergarten, and then I heard
Okay.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
Are you full-time?
Yes. So we'll need time to craft something, and it's probably working.
the where's your horse for?
So. I'm on, just to make sure that the change is okay. So on page 4, so these changes were made because we had what I want here is before.
Gotcha.
Changes that
I drive all the way out to Monmouth, right, that far.
Yeah.
And then.
Okay.
Yeah, just
I mentioned on the road that they weren't sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
And then-
it makes it hard.
Whatever you reference.
My daughter, I so that. Loves it.
I don't know. If we need to
Get rid of the seven.
Next, still I took the equipment.
I don't know what I was thinking.
And she was like, in the years old, they all, that was worse.
So, like,
Then there's that whole
bring her
question.
No, now she wants. Now she's like.
I think you're gonna run it more. I think it's just gonna run. That's what she got. Always about one more.
So if you-
Yeah.
Release the money, what you could say, it's a regular.
Side of paperwork. Responsibility. And.
That's still.
Build a barn.
Yeah, right. I know. Seriously.
Better than I did. I didn't realize.
Do you want to add Ed to facilitate?
She would like ask like, like, about everything.
Would everybody come back to their seats, please? Get going to the homes.
Yeah.
I think that's what you do. You want water, we do that. That you do.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and I think.
Well, I guess they
Better.
get the.
Yep. So we're gonna, we start the meeting, folks? What we're gonna do, what we're intending to do, and if, I was just talking to Betty, so if you guys, the rest of you want to do something different, that's perfectly fine, but we've got the document up here and you have copies, and so my thought would be to go through and just address the changes that were made are in red, and that was based on public input and board comments from the last meeting. So if we could go through and look and make sure that those comments were addressed as we wanted them to be. That those amendments, and then there are some yellow highlighted areas that are just general questions that have to be answered. So if we could just go through the pages, it's not every page, and look at each and get the feeling of the board. If that's been addressed, we can check that off and keep moving. Does that sound like a okay process to everyone?
Yes.
And then if you could take public input at the conclusion of that as well, because folks haven't had a chance to comment on some of these individual changes.
Was that on the page 4, right? Is that how you're
Page
doing it?
4.
You and I.
I've had this call for a month. I was sick before
That's what I
Christmas.
feel that everyone.
Crazy.
For Article 3B,
Yes. On page 4.
Yes. So there were some amendments made, and the question that I would have for the board is this look in keeping with what you intended to the change to be? And if not, what would you like to see be changed to?
As I recall, Dawn, this was to address the comments about kind of common scheme of development. Someone's got 2 pits on one lot or 2 lots next to each other with multiple pits.
The polka dots, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that covers,
I think it
I
works.
think it covers it.
yeah.
Okay.
How does everybody feel about that? Yay, yay? Okay.
Yeah.
And is the public clear what we're doing? Oh, we can't hear you.
right,
So the board, so you see the language up here behind, and I recognize this isn't ideal. There'll be copies made available prior to the next meeting, that you'll have a chance to review it again and not rely on this, but we're gonna go through the pages, the red highlighted, the red areas are changes that were made since the last meeting. There was public input and board deliberated, and they decided to make some changes. So they're looking to make sure that they were made appropriately to what the board wanted. And then there's some areas you'll see that are highlighted in yellow that were points of discussion, that had to be resolved. Part of why we had the gentleman present this evening, that the board needed more information to make those decisions. So we're gonna just go through and check if the changes are correct and answer the outstanding questions. So we're all looking at the same document together.
Are we gonna get to comment on these individually or?
Do you want to do it individually or at the end of the review?
I think we should do it at the end and we're never gonna get through it.
Okay, so we'll go through the whole thing, so, and then we'll take comments at that, after that concludes.
And Don, process moving forward, just to give them some sense of what's gonna happen after tonight, can you maybe
Yeah.
give them a 1 or 2 step process on
I
where
think
we
at
go
the
from
end
here?
when we-
And what their opportunity for public comment will continue to be, as I understand it.
Yeah, just to, so people understand. The board is going to, what I just said, check to see if the changes are incorporated, that they expected or wanted, answer some questions and give staff direction. And here's an example, if they all decide that they do want to have the the air quality monitoring at a local level, to give staff some direction as to how they would like that to happen. And they can be broad in that, and then staff will come back with some specific language and recommendations to be decided, to be, to be looked at the next meeting. So some of it is looking at the specific language, yes, no, and then some of it's gonna be in concept, yes, we want to see these types of things, and then that language will be developed, and there will be another meeting where there will be public opportunity for input, and the language will be available well in advance. So the public is still incorporated into this process.
This particular one, if I remember correctly, was in response to the general public's input on that subject. We just have a show of hands that we're okay with it? Yeah. Hopefully be okay.
Okay.
Page
Aye.
5, section 2, requirement A. You want to know, is the above acceptable?
Where did this language come from?
I believe this was in the original draft from KB Bob.
Okay,
Yeah, that was KB Cog, right? I thought it was acceptable.
thank you. So, follow up, where did KB Cog get this language from? Is this just from another ordinance, or is this also mandated by the state as well?
My understanding is that it was an amalgam of different communities. They looked at different ordinances and pulled this together. I don't know how it compares to the state's requirements.
Okay,
Some of it's gonna be in keeping with, and there may be some that goes in a different direction, either more restrictive or, adding on a different component of it. Sorry, I don't know in this particular instance.
okay, all right, cool.
Did anyone in the legal profession check it? I know KB Cog.
It will be sent to the
They
town
pulled
attorney.
together other ordinances. Do they have an onboard legal staff that checks whether that was right?
I don't know, but we do. When the board concludes, we will have our attorney check it to protect the town, for sure.
Thank you.
We okay with that one?
Yep.
Yeah. I'm okay.
Show of hands?
Okay,
Okay.
page 8.
B4.
So this was not a waiver of standards. This was, the suggested language, what included the ability to have the applicant request waivers of some middle requirements. And it could be something as simple as, we're required to submit 10 copies, but we really only need to submit 4. Or it could be something that would be a report that was scientific, that you really needed the information. So are there instances in which a waiver might be appropriate? Or do you want to just leave it black and white, this is the submittal requirements? I think that's the gist of the question.
If I'm reading this one correctly, this waiver ability is only for small pits of under 1 acre. Is this,
or affects an area less than 1 acre.
Right, so I say, it fits under 1 acre.
I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. It's what
Right.
you feel is. It's
The
gonna be
key
best
word
for
here is
your
may.
process.
May is the key word. If we decide we want it,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what size it is.
Correct.
Well, actually, I disagree. The way it's written is, this submission of waiver isn't available for anything over 1 acre.
So just the opposite.
That's not how I'm reading it. That it affects, like it could be a 5 acre quarry, but they're only talking about 1 small acre of it.
No,
I don't know.
I don't know how you could waiver a piece of
Yeah, I don't know either.
no, I think the way I read this is if someone comes in and said, I wanna do a half acre, now you can do 5,000 feet, basically with minimal requirements. But to go over that, you have to get get approval of the board. But for anything under 1 acre, this is suggesting that the board, or they could request a waiver of some requirement for a small pit under 1 acre.
Can I say
Like
something?
certain things might not actually,
Yeah, second thing.
like some things might not actually apply to something that tiny. So they would wanna do a waiver.
For submission only,
Right.
not for operation of the pit or.
Right, submission, yeah. Towards that. I could envision with a very small operation that some of the application requirements may really be kind of, unnecessarily or for something that small. Obviously, this wouldn't apply to a 10 acre, 15 acre pit.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just my thought that, it might not be that bad an idea, so.
I don't mind it there.
Yeah, just
Gives us some flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To allow the waiver?
to be able to entertain a waiver.
Okay.
We aren't necessarily saying we're gonna allow it.
You don't think this reads that way?
No, it says they can request. Board may not grant it,
Correct.
but they could request for a waiver for anything up to 1 acre.
Correct.
Doesn't mean they're gonna grant it. No.
Correct. You're okay with it?
I would be. We had comment from the public here.
I thought we weren't doing that yet.
Well, let's finish up here first.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I
I thought you were done.
I think this reads what you're saying, doesn't it?
Yes.
That's the way I understand it.
I agree with it, so
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Okay,
You're
And
okay.
I also wanna say too, the language matches. So it's fine. I was just reading
What's the
that
needs-
incorrectly,
what's the need?
just an area.
What
It
is
doesn't
it?
mean they're gonna get it.
What is
Oh,
it?
We have the
absolutely.
ability to do
They can request it, yeah. We could entertain a request.
Could somebody tell me what the actual need for this would be?
Do they?
The need, why do we need this in here? What is it going to
Well, we
do?
might not know.
I'll
Well-
give an
So we
example,
know.
like something might not be applicable to a project, and I don't know in these circumstances what it would be, but you just looked at a project.
Yeah.
The multifamily where there was no site disturbance, so you didn't need erosion control. And so in the instance of this ordinance, let's say that was the case. You could say, no, you don't need to provide erosion control measures because that would clearly there would be in this instance, but you could say, if something doesn't apply, we'll grant you don't need to submit it. It could be, it wouldn't be waiving the standards at all.
Right, we got 30 pages of requirements here.
Yeah.
A few of these might not really be necessary for a little bit.
Well, perhaps we should just take should be allowed though.
That was just highlighting that the board should entertain whether or not that should be in there. So that's the question to answer this evening.
Yeah, should we allow this language to be here or not? That was the question.
Oh.
Yeah. And my suggestion was, Yeah, we should allow them to request a waiver. I'll get it to them.
Big stuff.
We wanna vote on it?
There's a couple of questions from the public.
Let's vote on it.
We're done here.
All in favor?
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next to leave it in.
We're not doing public comment at the
We're waiting
moment.
for public-
The board is going through everything first. We're gonna do public comment after.
All of us is running to see it.
This is already exempt. I don't know what you're, it's exempt under Article 3B, anything under.
We're doing public comment after.
I think you make an argument, it's
Wait a
already
minute.
exempt in the ordinance, this says so.
There are two people that run this meeting. I'm the chair and I can when I can't not talking. Dawn is the other person. Everyone can't talk and tell everybody what to do. It's way too confusing. And my good friend here, if I really look like I can't breathe, he takes over and he's the vice chair. So if we could just hold it back and just make it move along a little bit easier, I would appreciate that. Okay, where are we now, Dawn?
Page 9.
Yeah.
And there had been, someone had raised the point that instead of saying that it didn't make any sense, it said if required. So in other words, it changed it from if required to required, that you will have a site walk. Just clarified that point. So basically, this is saying you will have a site walk for every application.
Sounds good to me.
I'm good to me.
Yep.
Everyone hands? Wait,
Yep.
raise
Yeah.
the hand.
Good.
Thank you.
And we're moving to page 13. And this was regarding monitoring of groundwater. There was a sentence added based on discussion.
I think it's good.
There was I think someone from the public was concerned about rate of flow for their well, and wells in that area. Is everyone comfortable with this language?
No.
I'm fine.
Yes, I'm sorry. Do you mind if I read it to the public? Just the change. The change says that this includes the flow rate of domestic wells. The applicant is responsible for all costs associated with the testing. And we're gonna have a planning board have a comment on that.
So my question would be, I have no idea what the flow rate is in my well at home now. And if there's a mining operation that comes in and we require them post-operation or a year into it to monitor flow levels in wells, I've got no baseline against which to measure what results they come up with when they do the testing. So I don't know what the performance standard is or the measurable criteria that they would be looking at to determine, has there been a change? And if so, how do you mitigate that, or how do you compensate that homeowner for that?
Are you imagining this similar to pre and post class surveys? Like that type of, just some, whatever that looks like to establish the baseline? I can look into it. I don't know the answer, but I can understand the question.
Yeah, I just don't know how you, even if you've got a baseline pre-operation, you go back and do monitoring a year from now, if you can determine that that's the result of the operation of the pit versus lower groundwater levels. I mean, I'm just concerned that we open up a can of worms where we've got to go in and do a whole bunch of analysis, to try to figure out what the root cause of the problem is, and is it even related to the mining operation?
Well, doesn't this tie into where they were talking about they're required to test wells ahead of time? Wouldn't that be in that section? I don't remember where that was.
I didn't know a flow rate was.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think it
They do
was.
have to test wells.
Yeah,
within a
within a
certain
certain area.
distance.
Where is that at?
Remember in Kentucky, like for you.
No, it was something about testing within a certain distance from where they're gonna be
within
blasting.
500 feet of the same.
Mm-mm. Oh, wait, maybe that.
5 acres of land. If you get out to the bottom, I think you have where it says the applicant is responsible for all costs associated with this test. Okay, the applicant's gonna pay the cost of the test, who's gonna pay to fix it?
That's what the bond's for, I think.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
Also in this, I thought that we had looked up that it wasn't supposed to be 500 feet. It was supposed to be like 5,000 feet, which is like a state regulation. This was a while ago when Joel was here.
I can look, I don't know the answer now, but I can follow up to make sure that's
Okay.
correct.
My comment on this one is, I think this topic is worded awkwardly, and we've got to, kind of regroup on that one, and, I don't think without some further research and maybe consultation with Greg,
Yeah,
that I'm ready to say yay or nay on that one.
me as well.
I'm not disagreeing with the concept. I think we've got the wordings and things are sort of out of place somewhere, and we've got to kind of lay it out a little more logically. And
I agree.
I would be a lot more comfortable addressing that with Greg Crescent as well.
I'll work on that with Joel,
Yeah,
or have something for you to discuss in the
Okay,
next meeting,
yeah.
hopefully Greg will be quick.
yeah. But I think that whole item A is just, it's sort of awkward and,
Does everybody wanna put it off and we have it reworded?
Agree.
Yes.
we're voting to
We're going to
kick that can down the road.
Not far, not far.
No, not too
Let's go to the
far,
next
yeah. Cool.
Page 19?
Page 19. So
Okay.
those were the changes that you had indicated you wanted to make. And does that look acceptable and?
Down on I, right?
Pardon me?
You're under 2I, 11I.
Yes.
My recollection was, certainly, I thought we did not want to drop the 65 to 55, 55 being, unreasonably low. I know that there's agreement on that.
I think that's right.
I think that was a compromise on that.
So Joel
Well,
and I.
we changed the times on that.
Yeah.
But, I don't recall, and I wouldn't support dropping it to 55. I think that's unreasonably low.
I also think 8 to 4 is a little tight.
Yeah.
I think originally we had it later. I felt like 5 PM stop time would make a little bit more sense.
Yeah,
As
I
people
I
are
agree
coming
with
home
that
from work and
too.
eating dinner and that sort of thing. But I also think 7 AM is not too early. For most of the world.
I do believe this is what we said then. Now, if we want to change
You
it,
can certainly change it.
we need to look at that and vote on it. So you don't like the 55,
I think 55 is unreasonably low.
and you don't like the hours, right? Okay.
And
they're a
I
little
agree,
tight.
I think the hours are a little tight too.
Yeah, you just figure a full 8 hours of work with a lunch break. Some people come in, they have to work. Give them a full day.
So what times would you like?
I personally think 7 to 5 seems reasonable. I'm not sure what your guys' opinions are.
I agree with you, James.
Is there consensus on that? There too.
Agreed, 65 decibels and 7 to 5.
And there-
I like these before, but it sounds like majority one.
7 to 4.
7 to 5 is what I just wrote down. And then leave it at the 65, did you all vote on that?
Yeah.
You want 55? No.
We can skip over page 20 and come back to that, if that's the big question of the evening.
Yeah.
On page 22.
On 22, a lot of that, I think, was my comment. My thoughts on that was, that what I would like to see is, let me see if I can readjust this.
It was gonna be 5 business days. And then we changed it to immediately.
Yeah, what I would like to see is, detonation of misfire be reported immediately to the CEO or Winthrop Police Department, as soon as the misfire is recognized, not when it's detonated. And the way I look at this, if they're doing detonation and they go to blow certain charges and they recognize that they didn't blow that. And I don't know the process for doing this fire detonation. I assume it's somewhat of a procedure that they're going to go through. But as soon as they recognize that they've got to enter that procedure, notify the CEO or police department, if CEO is unavailable, that this is the case and this is what we're going to do. We're going to proceed to attempt a detonation of a misfire. So, rather than notification of the misfire detonation, notification of the need to proceed with one.
After subsection 15 says hours of operation, what is that?
That's a reference to the hours of operation section, I think.
Do we want to put it?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, see,
subsection 15 hours of operation.
right.
How come it would be reported to the CEO? The mark?
So we know about it. So we know that there was a misfire. See, we have certain hours.
And then Mark would go ahead and inform the police station for when people call and.
Yeah,
is that-
right.
I'm not the CEO.
Because we have certain hours
Yes.
that allow detonations. And if there's a misfire and, you don't wanna leave this live charge out there over a long weekend or whatever. You know,
No,
You wanna go in and get it, but by the time they get it, it may be, 8 o'clock at night by the time they get it done. It's like, somebody ought to know this beforehand.
So you're saying the CEO and the police, they should inform?
Well, the CEO is notified, they let the police know. If CEO is unavailable, then notify the police because
CEO or police.
they're here to 7. So.
I'll wordsmith that and see if it.
Yeah.
What you're hoping for the next meeting.
But in my mind, I would like to see as soon as they realize that they're in this situation. Not when we blow it at 8 o'clock that we tell you we did. All right, we already know that, we heard it, yeah. But say, all right, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we said, oh, we got a problem here. Call Mark. He's available. Mark's out, call the police, say, hey, you know what?
Say immediately or,
Immediately on,
or as soon as possible.
immediately, on recognition of a misfire.
So
So you're gonna work on that one?
Yeah, it's like, I just wanna make sure there's consensus, but it sounds like everyone's.
can we put a little caveat in there that like the town can, well, I guess maybe that would just be on our end. Like the town should send out a notification, like the tax notifications, to inform the public that's about to happen, an unexpected blast.
And I don't know who's gonna manage all that, but that, I don't think we can
The town,
require.
the town manager,
They're
no,
gonna-
no, I'm not saying that we should require them to do a blast, I'm saying that when we're informed, just on operating end of our town, that if something like that did happen, that there should be an alert that goes out to the public.
Yeah, that could be possibly. I don't know what the town has.
I mean, the police might know and I could call and complain, but like if somebody's very close to there and nothing's planned, that's a scary thing to hear. I don't know,
I will look. into
I would
the
like to
logistics
know.
of it.
Yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, as far as that part of it, I don't know that I would try to dictate what the town, what it would do, but I mean, that might be something that the town has the ability to do.
Does everyone agree that this should be reworded?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. We're good with that one.
Okay. And,
Okay.
the next one,
Next one was the frequency of blasting. I mean, or
yeah,
the number of days per
Yeah.
year. We had thrown out 10 or 15, but I don't know.
So we're picking a number though, right?
Yeah, I think we gotta pick a
I
number.
think that's.
You said 10 to begin.
We-
I said 10 or 15, I don't know. Hang on.
We'll go with 10.
Okay. I'm fine with
I was
that.
gonna say once a quarter, but I don't know how often, do they do it year round or is it only spring,
Well,
summer
they
and
do it
fall?
periodically.
Would
I
they
guess
blast in the winter?
They might, I don't know.
I'm not familiar with this process much, but I know that the state was talking about, look at wind conditions, and
Yeah.
so there might be other things that dictate when they can do it.
So for 10 days a year, they could do 4 blasts on each of those, that'd be 40 total.
Yeah,
So basically 2 weeks, 2 weeks out of the whole year.
Correct.
yeah. Well, my understanding from what I heard is, you know, that if they're blasting, they're not blasting, you know, 2 or 3 times a week continuously. I mean, they get a bunch of stuff ready. They get it all ready and, then they have the outside blast crew comes in, blast typically, I guess. They'll line this up, have them come in, do, you know, several blasts or whatever during the day, but then it might be another few months before they blast. or
Before they do
whatever.
another one, okay.
Yeah.
Well, can we say 10 to 15 because of?
I think a specific number would be.
I think we ought to put a number.
Yeah, okay.
Good, do we have any? What do other towns do? Cause I don't,
I don't know, Joel's not here, I apologize, he was the one that pulled it together, I can look into it, we can
Yeah.
say 10, and if you want me to scout around, I could do that.
Well,
Good at 12.
putting it this way, if situation comes up and, you know, it's like, you know, there's a situation where that's real hardship and somebody said, hey, could we get a revision of the ordinance to increase that? And, you know, we talk about it, I guess.
yeah,
And I'm sure the neighbors are gonna talk about it too.
I just don't like
Yeah.
arbitrarily picking a number when I don't know anything about it,
Good pay half,
you know?
I'll try to find more background for you, do you want to pick a number tonight with the caveat that I will provide you with some more?
I'm suggesting we go with 10 now. If
10.
Yeah, and if something comes up, said, hey, you know, that's unreasonable either way, then.
Well, I think when we've got an applicant that comes in, we are clear and say, listen, if you wanna do this work in the town of Winthrop, there's
Yeah.
limitations, and these
Yeah.
are real limitations, and if you can't live with that, then maybe
Yeah,
you go next door.
I think, I don't think 10, horribly unreasonable, limitation, but,
Hey, it might not be, I just don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Basically.
I guess-
Last year.
Well, I guess knowing the reason why.
I don't think they got.
Yeah.
Area, they're open at one time.
Yeah.
So we
True.
agree on ten? I
Yeah.
can see where they want.
Yeah, I think we're good with that.
I think we,
Get that one.
and Donald, let's see if you can find something.
28.
Don't do it long.
With the very next one. So this was just clarifying, the process of appeals. There, someone had raised at the last meeting that there was a kind of a loophole the way it was worded, and so this just cleaned that up.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's,
Yay.
that's accurate the way I understand it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I'm always
Approval?
understanding it.
Approval.
Yep. So we're, yeah. Yeah.
And then the last item before we return back to the air quality monitoring is the fee schedule, which, I don't have numbers for that, so for the next, I'll have to do some research in other towns. What I'd really like to do is have the council adopt a fee schedule for all land use permits, but we don't have that right now. So I'll either have numbers from here, or I'll have an overall fee schedule on one of the two.
So this will be
revised to-
redone.
Yeah, there'll be numbers associated with that for the next, for your next meeting.
She's gonna do the reasonable numbers, I'd leave it at that.
Is that?
If she's gonna do the reasonable number, then look at it.
Well-
Just leave it.
What I see is reasonable
No,
based on other.
no, that, I don't mean it that way, I mean, you're gonna look at reasonable numbers, different things that have reasonable numbers.
Yes, we're gonna try to come up with a reasonable number. But
Yes.
you will make a recommendation to the council, and the council ultimately will adopt it and
I
change
think
it.
that's a good idea.
So that is the last thing. We will jump back to air quality monitoring. Do you want to see if the public has any input on any
I
of
think
these
we probably
pieces?
should.
Yeah. Or doing the same order again?
Does anyone have anything to say about any of these?
You've had some,
Oh, yes, you have. You're first.
sitting there waiting very
Please
patiently.
tell us where we're looking.
Hi, Steve Robbins. I wonder that under the exemptions, it says that anything,
Page number?
page 4, anything less than 5,000 square feet is exempt from this ordinance. Then we move on to this ordinance that you had a long discussion about, which is the, what do you call it? The exemption ordinance, section. This stuff is all, anything under 5,000 square feet is already exempt from the ordinance, so this, it doesn't apply. This whole paragraph does not apply. Where is it? Section 4 waiver. This talks about anything less than waiving the application 1 acre and over 5,000 square feet may waive.
Yeah, over, no, that waiver was for the over 5.
The over 5,
Over
okay.
5 up to 1 acre.
Yeah, okay, I guess I read that wrong, then,
It's easy to do.
yeah, the thing is, it gets, pretty involved.
Madam Chair, I just want to make a point that, just brought to my attention that you're probably not working off the ordinance that they're looking at,
Right,
that more revised one.
right,
They just
right,
came out.
right, yeah.
That B is gravel pit, right?
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment about the 5 feet to water table on page 13. Which is a little difficult to ascertain the exact water table, particularly in sand and gravel aquifer, but frankly, if that was the case, I could go down there afterwards and put a septic system. Probably, well, I can cut 3 feet into that ground and put a septic system 2 feet from that water table. So I'm not sure what the big deal is about 5 feet, because the state standard is 2. So,
The state standard on 5 on that, way I read it.
Right, okay, and I wanna, if that's true, I thought we talked about that a couple meetings ago.
Yeah.
But, the one gentleman that was here, he's not here now, he's a hydrologist, made a statement that you could not dig down into the water table. And, that's absolutely untrue, because if you get a permit for a pond, you can dig into the water table. And so, certainly you can, dig a trench to the lake, to put a water pipe in if you want to. So, certainly there is no cases where you can, and I think the case that I was talking about that night was that, this guy's building a big pond, this gravel pit. Once you build the pond, as long as you're building the pond to standards, you can take the material out. So that's, so it's just a different permit, that's all.
It's a different permit, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pond permit.
Yeah.
Mining.
I think,
Right? This one here is a reword.
yeah,
No, the one he's referencing is 3, and we're looking at A.
What page you want,
Like
13?
the section,
The-
the article
I'm
section.
sorry.
13.
Article 5,
It's on page 13, the one I was talking about. But I think, frankly, looking at this ordinance, and I just want to correct Ron, before I forget, is that, there's actually about 1,000 feet between the last house on Buzzell Drive and the proposed quarry, because there's
The last house on Buzzell Drive is way over to the west, but there's some right there at the line.
I own 860 feet of land in between that Buzzell Drive and the pit and the proposed quarry. And so and it's at an angle, and that way that house is, it's easily 1,000 feet.
So you own the land between the northerly line of this project to behind those houses, for how far a distance west?
It's about a mile out. 4,000, it's 5,000
So
somewhat.
how many feet from your northerly line is it to the Buzzell house? Not the ones closest to the blacktop.
Yeah, it's, the one's closest.
Then we right into the thing here.
What I'm coming to is basically this: if it's 800 feet or 1,800 feet, when you got a quarry and a gravel operation, I've been around enough of those. There's plenty of my neighborhood, I've lived there long.
Mhm.
The dust is gonna come up out of there, it's gonna come into these people.
I just wanted to correct you, Ron, on
Yeah.
on the fact that's not
We have to go on.
right next door.
What's here,
Yeah.
not our
Right.
personal property, I'm
Okay.
sorry. It's almost 9:30.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm getting tired. But anyway, I think that whether you add dust protection or it's immaterial, because frankly, the ordinance, I think you've done the job to put it, there's never gonna be one. So when you got a 300-foot property line setback and all these other things, it's not gonna happen. And from what I understand, rumor that he's found other interesting things to do.
Oh, good.
So, and
That's good.
as far as the sand and gravel situation in the town of Winthrop, there is none. There's a little bit left down in that pit, but it's not viable.
Not what they thought.
It's stuff that you can make things with, and that's what we're coming down to. But, as far as, good material, it has to be mixed and processed, because there's no good material in the town of Winthrop. I would challenge anybody to find a sand and gravel deposit in the town of Winthrop that hasn't already been depleted.
No sand for the roads?
There isn't one. It comes from, East Livermore. It comes from East Livermore. So, anyway, so, but I think too, you, probably ought to be careful what you wish for in some of these cases, because, something's gonna happen up there at that facility. And, the way the governor's proposal is to, increase this population of the state by about 6%. And if Winthrop takes their share, that's gonna be 360 people. 6% of the town of Winthrop. Where are they gonna be? Well, I'd be surprised if this guy doesn't propose some housing up there. And there's plenty of water supply, there's a huge septic system in this buildings. And then we're gonna be, it's gonna be a lot different than
Keep your eyes and ears open. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Mr. Gill?
Sorry. Do we have? It's 9:30. do we have time to tackle the blasting standards?
The what?
The blasting standards on page 22, number 14. So as it reads, the maximum peak particle velocity. Yeah, I know.
I hope nobody heard.
So, so the table one refers to this US Department of Interior Bureau of Mines Investigations 8507, which was done in the 70s after repeated complaints of structural damage to residences. And so this is, I apologize for not having 7 of these, but I will make sure that Dawn gets this chart. And if you just want to pass it around, so the same blasting standards that they're referring to, this 8507, this is the chart that they're looking at. And if you look at the chart, they basically are pushing for a 0.5 inch per second PPV. Again, I'm sorry for all the acronyms, but right now the standards in Maine call for 1.25 inch per second. So I'm requesting that we reduce this down to 0.5. And what I'm basing that on is during their summary, the 4 scientists in the 70s, in their conclusion, number 8 conclusion was basically that they can reduce damage to properties by 95% by reducing the peak particle velocity value to 0.5. And again, I've sent you this information already. I'm hoping some of you have read it. Oregon, Nevada, and some of the western states have reduced that, and their number of complaints and damage has gone practically down to 0. So that would be the one criteria that I would make. The state refers to this 8507, but in the conclusions, number 8 of page 68, sorry, the conclusion of the scientists is if you reduce this to 0.5, you eliminate a lot of the damage. You don't get rid of it all. There's still a 5% chance of damage to foundations and wells at 0.5, but at 1.25, it's a number that's 60% greater and a lot more. And if we're going to increase the number of days that we're blasting at 1.25, we're going to increase the damage to the wells and the foundations and the infrastructure in the area. So I will make sure that everybody gets a copy, Dawn. I'll send that to you tomorrow so you folks can take a look at it. But that's what I would like to see done to kind of match what some of the western states are doing. Thank you.
Bill, can I bother you for one copy now?
Who's get the copy?
When it comes around.
Ed's got it, yeah.
When it comes around.
Yeah. But the chart that the state of Maine is referring to is this chart right here in their I think it's 490Z 14.K 38 MRSA. That again, you can have this.
Thank you.
That refers to the statute that I just wish I could have interrupted them and asked them a little bit more about the blasting standards. Yeah.
One question, have you looked to see if this has been updated?
Steve, what has been updated?
If the whole thing has been updated since the 70s.
No, this is what everybody's basing. So it was an investigation that was done by the Department of Interior. They put 4 scientists on it. And again, they determined that, yeah, if you're out in Cornville or somewhere, 1.25 can, is the peak. They don't want you to go more than that. But 0.5 in areas where there are residences or whatever really reduces the level of damage to wells, foundations, infrastructure, and all that stuff. And that chart refers to, you can see clearly, again, chart from the 70s, but it does talk about the 0.5 inch per second and the effect that it has on plaster walls and sheetrock and plaster walls. So
Thank you very much.
Don't go bad mouthing Cornville. There are some houses there.
I have a cousin who lives up there.
That's why he's up there talking about it.
My uncle used
That's
to-
the only name that came to mind right out of the gate.
Thank you, folks.
Anyone else?
I just have
It's
a real quick silly thing, really, but so I'm just wondering, I'm looking at all this. So you've got, whatever you come up with, fine. What happens
if you, okay, so you say 10 blasts, and then you find out he's done 15. What happens if he's not abiding by these things? Is there something written in here? Like, what are his consequences?
Penalty, you mean?
That's all. I just want to
I
know.
would guess
I believe,
CEO would shut him down.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
yes, is it something that should be put in this?
I
Like,
think it's in there.
you know,
I think
like-
it's there.
Penalty.
Is it? I didn't see that.
Yeah, so there's reference to the state statutes, and so.
Okay.
So they could be shut down, there's legal fees, so there's definitely something laid out, so take a look at that.
I didn't see that. Thank you.
Anyone else?
As far as enforcement, this applicant, we took a tour up there very early on. I think most of you people went. But we went up over the top of the hill, and our understanding clearly from one of the planning board members who may have left, was Pina, I think. Did a great deal of work cutting and bulldozing up the stumps, was all done against the stop work order.
We know that.
Oh, well, is he just gonna continue on in that fashion and
I
get away with it?
know, I believe,
What are you gonna do with this
I
guy?
believe that they was.
He had, I'm pretty sure he had a
He had a
forestry.
forestry permit, but
Permit.
he didn't have a right to strip that right down the ledge and not put any silt fencing around here, I don't think.
I think Mark did too.
Yeah, so
It
we're
was a
talking,
mess.
There wasn't a foot of
Talking about
silt
an
fence
enforcement
anywhere.
issue.
Yeah,
so they're looking at this ordinance, I know we all have that one site in Vermont in mind, but it's really about the whole town. So if you have a concern about an enforcement issue, you can email me or Mark, and we can follow up on that, but keep in mind, this is town-wide, this ordinance.
Yeah, I understand, there's probably only gonna be one floor that comes up,
Yeah.
we're probably gonna get it, I'm not being facetious about it either. But you know, this guy went ahead and did a pile of work against a stop work order. And I don't see where any harm has come to him on it or any real comment, even though we've made comments about it, so that would be.
I know,
Yeah.
I know, it went to code enforcement, and we really wouldn't know if there was anything done, it wouldn't be told to us. So, be here, let us know.
And you're welcome to reach out to me by phone or email, my card is behind me.
Yeah,
And I can help
well,
follow
don't
up on
know your
that.
name, so.
Dawn.
Are we still commenting about the air quality?
Oh, Lord,
I'll
we haven't got
briefly,
there yet, we gotta
this
go
two
back.
point five micron, I do hydraulic work on aerial devices and fire department, that sort of thing. As a comparison for anybody that's on the ground. A 7 micron rating is the size of a single red human blood corpuscle. I have that in text when we're checking hydraulic filters. So for anybody that wants to know what a micron is, just one red blood corpuscle is 7 microns. If you look at useless information. The other thing is, I think on this air quality thing, I'd feel a lot more comfortable if you had somebody with some teeth that's gonna set this thing up so that when somebody does have a complaint, it doesn't get passed around down on the bottom for 5 to 7 days and maybe gets bogged down and stuck. That somewhere along the line, we've got a portal into that place. Somebody's seen a high spike in this thing, or we've seen particulate matter or silt or split rock or something on corners where people go around with motorcycles and bicycles. Because I have a 5-minute thing that I never got to read. I've tried it at a council meeting, and in my 2 minutes got cut to 1.28. It's a 5-minute thing. I'm requesting tonight that I at least be able to read it to you, and if not, be able to submit it to you, either by registered or have it read into the record. And I'll do it when you're ready.
That's up to the board.
Okay.
But you can certainly submit it one way or another.
It's not about air quality, it's about a lot of other things that I don't hear anybody talking about, but it's gonna be a reality, and it's probably, at some point, that's gonna affect me. And very quickly. Think about how much fun it is to get into the intersection of Charlie Chevrolet and the Anabesco Road in Milwaukee. It's a meat grinder as it is, without traffic control. And then these trucks, when you take off, a wheeler loaded, can take like 1/8 of a mile. I've followed them plenty because I'm interested in this. And they don't get going fast. Now, you take this guy working at 7 in the morning, and he starts pulling trucks into that intersection. There's people from Lewiston, Dean's Green, that are going on their way to work to Augusta, and there's no traffic control. And even if you put traffic control in at Charlie's, see, they're coming off Turkey Lane. So they either enter 202 in front of Charlie Chevrolet, which is already a dangerous place without traffic control. Or they turn right and go down the old Lewiston Road and turn left onto the crossroad and mount Route 202 in front of the transfer station if they're heading south. Now, they can go further down, but they probably won't. So you're likely gonna need another traffic control light in that area. Now, people that are going to and from Augusta now are really hurting. People are behind schedule. I don't know how to describe it. Route 202 during the week when everybody's going to and fro, and then we've got school buses. Now, you let this guy go out here at 7 in the morning or anything like that. This is gonna cause traffic problems. The other thing is, I don't think I've been around this place a long time around Pitts, and I know people that own them. When these guys enter the road, these trucks are required by law to have a load covered, and most of the time they do. But also a great deal of the time they have leaks in this, so pea stone and rock and sharpstone, and this is crushed rock. This is the kind of stuff that's gonna nail your tire. The second thing is, when this is dropping off on the road and somebody drives through it, the finish on your car and the windshield fitting and that sort of thing is just gonna be another one. But in here, I listed some of my concerns. The other thing is, when I go down the old Worcester Road, I was born and raised there. In fact, the Heritage Home is where I spent my childhood in the 50s. And now it's a nursing home. And he's arguing me about distance, but I would just say there's 100 feet from the blacktop to the front of the Heritage Home. And when they go to turn onto the crossroad, once again, I'm gonna say, it might be 5 times the length of this room, but they're going to be gearing down, they're gonna be using air brakes. When they come back empty, when they hit rough hardscrap road and the rig is empty, there's gonna be hard metal strikes against the brake. And if I would have a relative who's in the Heritage Home, passing their last days with no air conditioning, and the windows, and dust and noise, air brakes, and Jake brakes, I wouldn't think that's a very good thing to bless our old dying people with. And these are the things that I see, this air quality and that sort of thing, I understand it's important. But the reality of it is, this isn't just gonna affect Turkey Lane, that's why this thing never gets any legs. Look at it as what it's gonna do out on Route 202, all the people that have a mission to go to and from Augusta. And the various times of days, they're dealing with a loaded truck going up these hills to and from town, and it's gonna be 1 to 6 miles an hour. Okay, you don't have any passing lanes for these guys. When he's operating in Fairfield and gets on the interstate, he's got long sloping ramps, he can accelerate, he's got twin southbound lanes. he can-
I believe it's a state road. It is. And there's nothing we can do.
That's what I want, and that's my point
Yeah,
exactly.
we can't
Would
do
you-
anything.
Would you? Yes, you can.
I don't
I'm
mean it
saying,
that way.
let's just look at it, yes, you can. Would you request the DOT to take this out? Because that's something you could do.
I understand the concerns, but you're talking site specific, and tonight we're talking town-wide. Affecting all of the residents regardless of where one of these developments might go. So you don't wanna get bogged down in one site, it may never happen, so those are things that you're putting this ordinance into place, so when that application comes in, all of those things can be addressed. That's what they're trying to do now, is get this in place for when an application comes in and they have protections against the things you're talking about.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Thank you, Don.
But can you submit that writing, so we have
I got it, you know, it's rough written,
please?
and there's more than that to it.
So I mean, if you submit it writing, we get it all.
All right, can I address it to you?
And Don, I'm.
Would you mind if I gave you a copy?
Absolutely.
If you have a moment afterwards, I can make a couple photocopies.
I don't think you can read it, I didn't know. it was in-
Oh, I bet we can.
I wrote it way back in the early part, I never got a chance to read it then. It is 5 minutes, I did read it twice. And I do have a person that will give me their 2 minutes and another person.
Yeah, I think that
Thank you.
we really have to move on. We've been here a long time.
Well, let me spray a little more sunshine, when I got my water, it's out there freezing rain when it hits.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm afraid of. I think that all of us need to get home safely. We appreciate your comments and your thoughts.
I
So,
appreciate you listening, I really do.
any other?
Yeah, just real briefly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're one evening. Hey, how are you doing this evening? Steve McDermott, just a couple comments. John, this one's pretty technical, so I'm just gonna go through the amendments you made, trying to keep it really brief so we can all get home. I know it's been a long evening. I know you've all looked at this 15 times, probably today. So John, there's no definition of what a gravel pit is. Well, I think we might know what it means anecdotally, so it'd be really great to have that added to the definition section. So, you know, I think when you're talking about a waiver of submission requirements, you would want to identify how and why the criteria and judgment used would be to grant a waiver. I think some examples were given was when something isn't applicable, you can identify something as being not applicable, and then that's the submission for it. You don't necessarily need to waive that as not being submitted. So the project tonight, the multifamily project tonight was for erosion control, because they're not doing construction, there's no mitigating erosion no erosion to be mitigated. So they would submit something that says no erosion. So there's a positive affirmation of the activity, but it's a limited review there. So I just would want to think, if you're going to be waiving things, outlining how those decisions are going to be made so they can be made equitably and consistently. And then going to talk about page 20, dust and air pollution, but not, I think, where we're opening in a really deep level. I just want to call back to what the representatives from the state's Department of Environmental Protection said a couple things. They said that they test using those regional air site centers, which can tell you what's happening on a regional level. And that they also prioritize larger operations. And then there's been some discussion about who enforces what and when. And Dawn, and please correct me if I'm wrong. The benefit of having a municipal ordinance allows us to enforce something locally, while something can also be enforced at a state level, potentially at a quicker response rate than the state may have the resources to respond with. So if one of the gentlemen talks about using the purple tool, if they were to implement the purple tools locally, those would be able to be monitored locally using state standards or something that we can work with the states and establish what a reasonable standard is, and then monitored and administered locally. I think that's really important to acknowledge the difference between state administration and local administration for the benefit of the municipality. I think, Betty, one of the things you mentioned was protection from lawsuits.
Yes.
And those types of protections protect the community. And they don't. I really appreciate all of your time and the thought and energy that you put in to get us to this point. So.
Thank you very much for your comments. Oh, we have one more.
Something that had left said it's very slippery out while you walk out.
Oh, nice.
Careful when you get it.
Thank you.
So I know everyone's probably gonna be antsy to go, but we have a few more minutes to discuss, and it looks like you had a comment, but I'd like some direction. So that I have something for you for a future meeting regarding the monitoring this locally. If you decide to go in that direction.
I was gonna suggest that this is something to really think about. Like, there needs to be some sort of real set, clear direction. The purple air thing is wonderful. I'm looking at the website. It's great, but who does monitor it? Should we ask individuals to do it? Does the CEO do it? Who does it? So that's food for thought. And then who do we connect with if they are not meeting it? Do we do it on a 24-hour basis? So there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, and the other thing is what standard we're gonna use.
Right, exactly. And I don't think that I have any great suggestions at the moment about it.
Thought that kind of bothers me, because it's gonna go down to the council, and they're gonna look at it and they're gonna be horrified at what the town has to do. I think that's gonna maybe just the whole thing.
It is true, but since the state doesn't regulate it,
No, I'm not.
we certainly can't ask the applicant to regulate it.
I'm saying that I'm afraid that it's not probably something you're going to want as a taxpayer, when it comes up to the amount of money to pay for. And then So we're putting all this in here, only maybe. Hopefully, find out that this costs way too much for the town. Town doesn't have any interest in it. Because of the cost. They could go just roll the cost over to the owner of the property and they know. I mean, I just, at this point, I see we're putting cost, which is always an issue with anything. I don't know if you're gonna see, the owner of the property wanna put any more in than they put in.
Somebody could buy it from him someday, though.
But, and I don't know about the town, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I guess my opinion on listening to all the input we've had on it. Technology is there. Technology is price-wise is reasonable. It has the capability of network that is accessible to by all. If they need to have access to the internet, they have access to the data. And they have access to the DEP, make a complaint to have a study. So I would use the example we have in front of us and somehow try to make it generic, which is our goal, fit it into the policy so it's generic. And we as a board have the ability to implement some kind of monitoring process. So I'm going to use the current example and then you tell me how it fits. But if we had the input we've had, with the input we've had, with the site we have, it would make sense to me to require the applicant and owner to set up a monitoring system at the school. This application. Now, how do you do that generically with whatever site is approved? You'd have to determine what that is, where it is, and the fact that the person with the property and the mining interest would have that responsibility. And from there, it sounds like the system is available for whoever to monitor and manage and use the DEP from a complaint standpoint to follow up on it. So what are the words you use to put that in this policy that sets up that monitoring requirement?
So
Whether it's a
there
perimeter
might be an
or
alert
it's on
too.
site.
I didn't get a chance to look through. I wanted to look at the website a little bit more. It might very well. I can't imagine with the technology that it already has. I have a feeling that it will alert you
Fine, that's
if you
even a
have
plus.
like the
That's a
app or
plus.
something. I wanna look into that more, cause if we
Well,
do,
my
that's a
concern
great
is-
thing to require them to use that specific one.
And you made this point. My concern is it the code enforcement officer? Is it the police? Is it the fire chief? Who is it responsible for monitoring and reacting?
The applicant would be responsible, I think, monitor.
Applicant number one, and now
They have to report to us.
complainants. Yes, and complainants right behind that. Are there gonna be people standing in line to make sure that it is enforced? Because
If it's a standard that I think that DEP has, and it's that average of 24 hours, they will enforce it because that's gonna be in their license anyway.
And that's the place to start.
If we come up with our own standard,
That's a different answer.
regardless, they're not gonna touch it.
So I
And
think
that's
very
gonna
least we
open us
need
up
to
to legal
implement that standard
challenges down the
with a
road.
monitoring system that is accessible to the public and the officials. And to be able to talk to the DEP about investigation and corrective action. They got the expertise and sounds like with 800, 900 sites, my God, they're the experts.
But they don't require monitoring.
We
Yeah, that's
can't-
a little like,
That's what I'm proposing, we do require.
right,
So we put in place a safeguard that monitors it, that allows for follow-up. And we don't have to wait 10 years to find out, oh, by the way, we really got a real problem here. We got, and I don't want, I use analogies, maybe wrong, but we got asbestos issue or we got whatever for an issue. And the house is out of the barn.
Yeah.
That's my reaction to the concerns of the citizens of this community.
Can I say back to you so I make sure I understand? You're saying put some language in the ordinance that's a little more general that gives the board the ability to use that tool on a case by case basis.
Right.
right, like location of monitors and, yeah, I love the idea of having that at the schools too, by the way.
Why case by case though? Because again, if the transport is truly 2 miles, 3 miles, 4 miles. Who are we to determine that
Well, I
this is
think-
a specific
I think
case
we're
that
talking two
requires it?
different things. What I got educated on tonight is the small particles, as Ed said, is it's out there. It's going to the monitor in Augusta and Lewiston and Brunswick.
Yeah,
What we're looking at is something different, but it has that capability. And the issue may not be the small particles. It may be
I
something
believe.
we haven't looked at.
The little
We're not even
ones
looking at.
going in line.
At the very least, if we put the tools in place to measure it, monitor it, and assess it, then, you're not.
Yeah,
not
well,
blind.
I think, though, that generally like I say, the long-term health issues situation, is the small particles.
Okay.
But, the big particles, if you're in the dust bowl, the big particles, they're gonna irritate the hell out of you, you're gonna spit them out, blow out your nose, and, they're not going to be the long-term, but basically carcinogenic, I believe, or, long destroying thing. It's the fine particles and like I say, those, they don't drop out the first few, well, I mean, some will, but I mean, the big ones that you can see, they're gonna drop out fairly soon. It's the fine ones are the ones that are gonna go. They'll be picked up in Augusta if the wind's blowing that way, or the Lewiston or Livermore Falls as well. I mean, not necessarily at the level that if you're right next to them in the pit, but they're out there, they're gonna be spread more broadly.
What might
Can I make a suggestion? Can we think about this and come back to this the next meeting? It's 9:50.
Yeah.
I'm falling asleep.
Yeah.
And I love that we learned so much and I would like to digest it, look at the website more and think on it.
That's not a bad idea.
Can I make two suggestions? One is if we could table this meeting specifically to February 14th meeting is helpful because the noticing requirements, it's hard to get everything into the newspaper. We just found out the newspaper's not running in the time. So if we could table it to a date and time specific, February 14th. And again, just some general direction. If you are you thinking that you want to pursue local monitoring? Because if you're not, I'm not gonna spend any time on it, but if you are thinking you would, then I would continue to get information for you to, to continue that discussion.
I feel like, yes.
What is the cost of that, Tony? Tell me.
Yeah.
Okay, so then,
I don't know.
He was like,
That's what some monitoring.
It's worth considering, I don't know how
Yeah, I agree.
extensively.
So it sounds like you wouldn't be wasting time.
okay,
yeah, I think, Rick, as you had pointed out, the technology is there, it's inexpensive, it's what do we do with that information?
yeah.
And how do we work together?
I ain't paying for it.
It would be a good time to ask because everyone's tired, but are you amenable to scheduling a workshop on the 7th of
The
February?
applicant will pay for
To talk not about development applications, not to talk about, no, just to talk about, policies and procedures, the logistics.
They will-
And some
if
different
there's-
topics that will be
If
coming
there's a
up
problem.
for us
they
to
will
have,
call,
make
they-
changes to ordinance
they-
and
they
so on and
respond
so
to
forth.
complaints.
So just a planning board, amongst ourselves, roll up your sleeves
If there's
and talk
a
about
complaint,
some
then
things that
they
need to start to get clear.
If there's no
I'd be in
complaint.
favor of that.
I'm okay with it.
Phil, I know
1,
you
2,
got,
3.
February
You guys are
7th
Yep.
workshop going over
Yep.
That
stuff.
says, yep.
Cool.
Phil, did you have something?
Thank you,
wanted
it's
to
on.
say?
Thank you.
The only thing I wanted to say is just to Rick's point, if you're looking for generic language, maybe you might want to consider putting something at the edge of the property in question that's doing the mining and,
Or other determined sites.
right, you're right. Instead of putting it at a school or something like that, I mean, I'd hate.
I figured there has to be a couple locations.
You know, and then you can, basically go in the prevailing wind direction because that's 90% of where the wind's gonna go
That's a,
to,
that's
so.
a good
That's just
point,
something,
right.
just an idea,
Yeah.
keep it generic.
I think maybe that's a good point.
Hey, thank you all so very much for listening, man, really appreciate it. Brent, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you as well, Bill.
Folks, have a
Nice
great.
meeting you, Bill.
Thank you.
Please, drive careful.
Be safe out there, yeah.
Thank you all for coming.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we need a motion and a second to vote on adjournment.
I move
We
adjournment.
adjourned.
Second.
I'll second it, I'll third it. I'm good until like 9:15 and then I'm like, my eyes start to close. I can't sleep
You
in
guys
if I
did a
try.
lot of work tonight.
Yeah, I think that went well.
And one was, I'm so.
I just can't, I think it's so fatigued from hearing the same thing about traffic all the time. For probably the 15th time. It's exhausting.
how long Dorothy?
No, I'm gonna, it's not even, it's just hearing the same thing over and over, it hurts my brain. Like, even if it's stuff I agree on, that's it. Good.
Thank you.
They're gonna have to maintain that, right? It was a great month, might be, man.
Bye, everybody. Be careful.
I
What do you think about that? What do you think about that? I mean,
Oh, where you going? Where you going?
Me?
Are we gonna meet again?
Oh,
you're.
Yeah, I
Wow.
gotta think about that. And that might look,
You
but,
ever caught in your office or?
no, I don't.
Are you
No,
off?
I said she comes to my house, but that's Jeremy's house in town.
I said to someone earlier, I said, well, I'll either see you on Friday because I work remotely tomorrow, or I'll see you tomorrow with the same clothes.
You'll send out.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, yeah, well, for the seventh. Yeah.
Well, do you need a little stuff or taking care of stuff or?
No, I'm so happy you just did the workshop at our discussion this morning.
I am.
Everyone was, no one questioned it, they were in. What?
It's just kind of like, yeah, whatever,
Yeah, we're gonna do a workshop on the seventh,
That's what we're finding.
yeah. And we'll do it in the other room.
That's
And there's a lot of pressure with the public here, and not that it won't be open to the public, but, you know, when you're talking about these intense topics, and it's refreshing to be able to have those conversations, I
They're
feel.
so different than they used to be, aren't they?
They,
So they. Yeah.
I don't know what they were before, so I don't have a point
I
of
feel like
reference.
they feel heard. I thought
I
they were afraid they
do.
weren't gonna be heard.
And I guess they really didn't feel that they were.
They were much more intense.
Oh, they
and
were intense.
Thinking they weren't gonna be helped.
It was,
Yeah.
it was almost,
Unheard.
it got a little vicious.
Well,
Yeah.
and to your point, to Ron, I mean, we don't have a pending application. They're all valid points, but we don't have an application form because they haven't done a traffic study, so we don't know what the answer to any of this stuff, so.
But now you have provisions about traffic studies, design of access and all that.
Now we're
And
right
then-
to so.
Everybody in Cleveland County.
But thank you so much.
Yeah, no, of course.
I do need kind of a,
Yeah, no, it's no
people
good.
don't want me out to my
Oh,
town.
that's fine.
I forgot my
Everyone's
ice
fine.
pick that I had.
You're stabbing.
I left it
Sometimes it's
alone.
vertical.
I was in
sometimes
the
To
car
your
when I left.
affordability question, I was thinking the same thing when you like, so are these gonna be like high-end apartments? Are they gonna be middle class?
Yeah,
Are people gonna be able to afford them? And yeah,
well, I think the thing, so and I
Gonna work
should,
all night there
so I
later?
work in affordable housing. My name is Steve McDermott.
Sorry,
Nice to meet you, Brandon.
This is so funny.
I work in affordable housing. Brandon has been working with another member of my team